The hour is 3 a.m., and the world outside is quiet, wrapped in a blanket of darkness and silence. But inside, your mind is a relentless storm. The silence of the room only makes the inner noise louder, a chaotic whirlwind of thoughts that refuse to be still. Unfinished tasks from work flash like lightning, followed by the low thunder of financial worries. An awkward conversation from last week replays itself, word for word, followed by a vague, heavy dread about the future. You feel trapped, a prisoner of your own mind, desperately searching for a switch, any switch, that could grant you a few moments of peace, a few hours of restful sleep. If this scene feels familiar, know that you are not alone. This state of inner turmoil is not a personal failing. It is the quiet epidemic of our modern age. We live in a world that celebrates busyness, a world that constantly demands our attention through glowing screens and endless notifications. We are told that peace can be bought with the next purchase, found in the next vacation, or achieved with the next promotion. So we chase these things, hoping for relief, only to find that the quiet they provide is fleeting, and the storm inside returns, sometimes even stronger than before. We have been taught to look for the solution everywhere, except for the one place it has always been, within ourselves. The problem is not the storm outside, but the lack of an anchor within. Thousands of years ago, a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama, who had everything the world could offer, realized that wealth, power, and pleasure could not protect him from the fundamental truths of human suffering. He left his palace not in search of a new religion to believe in, but in search of a way out of this universal condition. The path he discovered was not one of dogma or blind faith, but a profound and practical science of the mind. It is a gentle method of training our own awareness, of learning to observe the inner storm without being swept away by it. It is a path that teaches us not to become someone else, but to fully and compassionately understand who we already are. This ancient wisdom may hold the very compass we have been searching for, a guide to navigate the chaos of our own minds and find our way back to the deep, unshakable peace that is our birthright. That inner storm we spoke of, that relentless whirlwind of thoughts that robs you of your peace and steals your sleep, has a name in the ancient language of the Buddha's teachings. It is called Kapacita, which translates beautifully and precisely as the monkey mind. Imagine a monkey in a tree, restless, agitated, never still. It leaps from one branch to another, grabbing a fruit here, chattering there, scratching itself, looking for danger, then instantly distracted by a passing butterfly. It is a creature of pure, chaotic impulse. This is a perfect metaphor for the untrained human mind. It leaps from a memory of the past, to a worry about the future, to a judgment about the present, to a fantasy, to a fragment of a song, then back to a worry. It never stays in one place. It is a ceaseless, chattering noise that we have become so accustomed to. We often mistake it for the very essence of who we are. We believe we are the monkey, when in fact, we are the tree it lives in, the quiet, stable space in which all this activity takes place. The first step on any journey of healing is to understand the nature of our ailment. So let us spend some time getting to know this monkey, not as an enemy, but as a confused and frightened creature that is simply doing what it has been conditioned to do. Why is our mind like this? Why this constant, exhausting motion? The reason is twofold, rooted in both ancient survival and modern life. Our brain, in its most primal form, is a survival machine. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in a world of immediate physical threats. The one who was constantly scanning the horizon, whose mind was always asking, "What if?" was the one who noticed the saber-toothed tiger hiding in the grass. The one who replayed a past mistake like eating a poisonous berry, was the one who survived to pass on their genes. This monkey was our lookout, our guardian. Its restlessness was a feature, not a bug. The problem is, we now live in a world where saber-toothed tigers are confined to history books, yet we retain the same ancient, hyper-vigilant brain. That survival mechanism is still active, but now, instead of scanning the savannah for predators, it scans our lives for perceived threats. A critical email from your boss, an unpaid bill, a strange look from a partner, a news headline about a distant crisis. All of these trigger the same primal alarm system. Your monkey mind cannot tell the difference between a potential social embarrassment and a mortal threat. It screams with the same urgency. It floods your body with the same stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, preparing you for a fight or a flight that never comes. This ancient internal monkey is then fed and agitated by 1,000 external monkeys in our modern world. Our society has become an expert in hijacking our attention. Your phone buzzes, a notification flashes, an advertisement promises happiness if you just buy one more thing. Social media presents a curated highlight reel of other people's lives, and your monkey mind immediately leaps to the branch of comparison, of feeling inadequate, of fearing that you are being left behind. The 24-hour news cycle feeds it a steady diet of fear and outrage. The culture of productivity tells you that you should always be doing more, achieving more, and that any moment of rest is a moment wasted. We are living in a purpose-built, external, monkey mind amplifier. It's no wonder we feel so scattered, so anxious, so exhausted. Our inner wiring for survival is being constantly overstimulated by an outer world that profits from our distraction. The result is a mind that has forgotten how to be still. It has forgotten that its natural state is not one of frantic leaping, but of calm, clear presence. This frantic activity is the very engine of our anxiety and our sleeplessness. Anxiety, at its core, is the monkey mind living almost exclusively in the future. It rehearses tragedies that haven't happened. It plays out 1,000 different worst-case scenarios. It asks, "What if?" over and over again, leaving your body in a permanent state of high alert for a danger that exists only in your imagination. Depression and regret are often the result of the monkey mind being chained to the past. It obsessively revisits old wounds, relitigates past conversations, and tortures you with mistakes you can no longer change. It creates a heavy, grey cloud of rumination that blocks out the light of the present moment. And sleeplessness? The night is the monkey's playground. When the day's distractions finally fade away, when there are no more emails to answer, no more shows to watch, no more chores to do, the monkey takes center stage in the silence. All the pent-up energy, all the unprocessed worries and fears of the day are unleashed in the darkness. You are not sleepless because there is something wrong with you. You are sleepless because the monkey has been locked in a cage all day, and now it is finally free to run wild. So what are we to do? How do we calm this frantic creature within? The first instruction from the Buddhist path is perhaps the most profound, and may at first seem counterintuitive. Do not fight the monkey. Do not try to silence it, cage it, or destroy it. To fight with your own mind is a war you can never win. Shouting, "Be quiet," at your thoughts is just another thought, another branch for the monkey to leap upon. It is like wrestling with a ghost. You will only exhaust yourself. Instead, we must begin with a radical shift in our perspective. This is the great secret, the key that unlocks the door to inner peace. You are not your thoughts. You are not the monkey. You are the awareness that is watching the monkey. Let that sink in for a moment. Your thoughts, emotions, and sensations are events that happen within you, but they are not the totality of you. They are like clouds passing through the vast open sky of your awareness. Sometimes the clouds are dark and stormy. Sometimes they are light and fluffy, but the sky itself is never touched, never harmed, never fundamentally changed by the clouds that pass through it. You are the sky, not the weather. This simple yet profound realization changes everything. It means you don't have to control your thoughts. You don't have to fix them or get rid of them. You simply have to learn to stop identifying with them. You can create a space between you, the observer, and the thoughts that are being observed. In that space, there is freedom. In that space, there is peace. This leads us to the very first step of the practice, the gentle beginning of taming the monkey. It begins not with force, but with patient, compassionate observation. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this perfectly. A man had a small lake whose water was murky and full of mud. He wanted to make the water clear, so he took a bucket and began frantically scooping out the muddy water, hoping to empty the lake of its turbidity. But the more he thrashed about with his bucket, the more he stirred up the mud from the bottom, and the water only became murkier. He grew exhausted and frustrated, believing it was an impossible task. A wise woman passing by saw his struggle and said to him, "My friend, put down your bucket, sit quietly by the shore, and simply watch the lake. Do nothing." The man was skeptical, but he was too tired to argue. He sat down, and for hours, he just watched. He watched the ripples. He watched the play of light on the surface. And slowly, ever so slowly, the mud that his own frantic activity had stirred up began to settle. The particles grew heavy and drifted back down to the bottom until finally, the water became perfectly still and crystal clear. So clear that he could see the reflection of the sky and the stones on the lake bed. Our mind is that lake. Our thoughts are the mud. Our struggle to get rid of them, to fight them, to analyze them, is the frantic scooping that only makes things worse. The practice of patient observation is the act of putting down the bucket. It is the beginning of allowing the mind to return to its natural state of clarity and calm. So, for a moment, right now, you can try this. Simply sit, and for the next minute, do nothing at all. Notice the thoughts as they leap and chatter. Don't judge them as good or bad. Don't follow them down their rabbit holes. Simply acknowledge their presence, gently. You might even label them softly in your mind. Ah, this is planning. This is worrying. This is a memory. This is judging. You are not engaging the monkey. You are simply observing its dance from a safe distance. This is the first step. It is the beginning of a new relationship with your own mind, one based not on conflict, but on curiosity and kindness. We have now given a name to our inner turmoil, the monkey mind. We understand that it is not our enemy, but a conditioned part of us that needs gentle, unwavering attention. But simply observing it, while powerful, is only the beginning. To truly heal, to find a lasting peace, we need a more complete map of our inner world. We need a clear diagnosis of our condition, an understanding of its cause, a confirmation that a cure is possible, and a practical path to follow. This is precisely what the Buddha offered in his first and most essential teaching, the Four Noble Truths. And our journey continues by bravely looking at the first of these truths, the truth of our shared human experience of unease. As we begin to gently observe the restless monkey mind, we start to notice the effect of its ceaseless activity. It is a persistent, underlying feeling of unease, a sense that things are not quite right. It can be as sharp as an anxiety attack or as dull as a low-grade boredom, but it is always there, a subtle hum of dissatisfaction beneath the surface of our lives. When the Buddha began to teach, this is the very first thing he spoke about. He didn't begin with a creator God, or a set of commandments, or a promise of heaven. He began with a simple, direct, and courageous statement about our shared human experience. He named this feeling. The name he gave it in the ancient Pali language is dukkha. This word is often translated into English as suffering, but that single word is far too narrow, too heavy, too draped in tragedy to capture its full meaning. While dukkha certainly includes the great sorrows of life like grief, sickness, and loss, it also encompasses a far wider spectrum of experience. It is the stress of a morning commute. It is the slight disappointment when a meal isn't as good as you expected. It is the anxiety of waiting for a message. It is the vague restlessness you feel on a Sunday afternoon. It is the friction of life, the feeling that you are constantly pushing a boulder uphill, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of a world that never quite lives up to your expectations. This is the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. And to many Western ears, this can sound profoundly pessimistic, a grim and depressing verdict on the nature of existence. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. The first noble truth is not a verdict, it is a diagnosis. Imagine you have been feeling unwell for months, a constant fatigue, and a strange pain you can't identify. You finally go to a wise and compassionate physician. The physician runs some tests and then sits down with you, looks you in the eye, and gives your condition a name. She says, "I understand what is happening. You have this specific illness." Is this physician being pessimistic? Is she a prophet of doom? Not at all. That moment of diagnosis is a moment of profound relief. The confusion is over. The self-blame can cease. You finally understand what you are dealing with. The diagnosis is not the end of the story. It is the necessary first step toward healing. Without an honest diagnosis, there can be no cure. The Buddha is often called the great physician, and the first noble truth is his compassionate diagnosis of the human condition. He is not saying that life is only suffering and that there is no joy. The path is filled with joy, clarity, and profound peace. But he is asking us to be brave enough to look honestly at our experience, without the filters of denial or wishful thinking. In our culture, we are often encouraged to practice a kind of forced positivity, to put on a happy face, to insist everything is fine, even when our hearts are breaking. The first noble truth gives us radical permission to be authentic. It says, it is okay to feel this way. This feeling of unease is not a sign that you are broken. It is a fundamental part of what it means to be human, and it has been felt by countless beings before you. To embrace the reality of dukkha is the ultimate act of self-compassion. It is to finally stop pretending. To help us understand this condition more clearly, the teachings break dukkha down into three distinct, though often overlapping, categories. The first is the most obvious. It is called dukkha dukkha, the suffering of suffering, or the pain of pain. This is the dukkha that everyone recognizes. It is the physical pain of a migraine headache, of a broken bone, of chronic illness. It is the emotional pain of losing someone you love, the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being rejected. It is the terror of a panic attack, the heavy blanket of a depressive episode. It is the raw, undeniable ouch of life. It is the pain of birth, of aging, of sickness, and of death. We spend much of our lives trying to avoid this kind of dukkha, building walls of security and comfort around ourselves, but it is an unavoidable part of embodied existence. No one gets a free pass. The second category is more subtle, and it strikes at the very heart of our search for happiness. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the suffering that arises from the fact that even pleasant experiences are impermanent. Think of the joy of a perfect summer vacation. You are on a beautiful beach. The sun is warm. The company is good. But even in the midst of that happiness, isn't there a tiny, quiet voice in the back of your mind that knows this will end? The pleasure is tinged with the sadness of its own passing. You buy a new car, and for a week, you feel a thrill every time you drive it. But soon, the new car smell fades. It gets its first scratch, and it just becomes a car. The peak of the experience is gone. A passionate romance, a promotion at work, a delicious meal, a moment of triumph. All of these are wonderful, but they are all subject to change. They are unreliable. The suffering of change comes from our attachment to these pleasant experiences, our desperate attempt to cling to them, to make them permanent in a world that is defined by its constant flow. Modern life is a masterclass in this form of dukkha. We are constantly chasing the next high, the next pleasurable experience, caught on a hedonic treadmill where the satisfaction never lasts, and we are always left wanting more. This creates a deep-seated anxiety, the stress of knowing that whatever happiness we grasp will eventually slip through our fingers. The third category is the deepest and most pervasive. It is called sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the background hum of dissatisfaction that we spoke of earlier. It is a fundamental unease that is woven into the very fabric of our being, simply because we exist as a conditioned, temporary assembly of changing physical and mental parts. It is the subtle stress of just being a self, of having to maintain this body, this personality, this reputation, day after day. It's the feeling of being vulnerable in a world we can't control. It's that feeling of, is this all there is? That can surface, even when everything in your life is objectively going well. This is the dukkha that the monkey mind creates and feeds upon. It is the result of living in a state of separation, seeing ourselves as a solid, isolated I in a world of others. This background radiation of anxiety is perhaps the most draining form of dukkha because it is so constant and we are so used to it that we often don't even notice it consciously. Yet it colors our entire experience of life. Now, with this understanding, we can see the full wisdom of the Buddha's diagnosis. It is not just about avoiding obvious pain. It is about understanding the nature of pleasure and the very nature of our own existence. And it is here that we find the most powerful story to illustrate how we can begin to work with this reality. The parable of the two arrows. The Buddha said that in life, we are all shot by a first arrow. This arrow is the unavoidable pain of existence, the dukkha dukkha and viparinama dukkha. It is getting sick, losing a job, experiencing the death of a loved one, or being insulted. This first arrow is outside of our control. It is part of the territory of being human. But then, an unwise person, struck by this first arrow, becomes distraught. They worry, they get angry, they fall into self-pity. They think, why did this happen to me? This is terrible. I can't stand it. This reaction, this mental proliferation, is like shooting yourself with a second arrow. This second arrow is our own suffering, the suffering we add on top of the original pain. It is the sankhara dukkha, the pain we create with our own minds. A wise person, the Buddha said, when struck by the first arrow, does not shoot themselves with a second. They acknowledge the pain of the first arrow. They feel it, but they do not add a layer of mental anguish on top of it. They do not resist it or spin stories about it. They simply tend to the wound. The entire path of Buddhist practice is not about learning to dodge the first arrow, for that is impossible. It is about learning to stop shooting ourselves with the second. Much of our most intense suffering, our deepest anxiety, our most prolonged grief, is not the first arrow of life's events, but the second, third, and fourth arrows of our own reactions. When we truly understand this, the first noble truth ceases to be a burden and becomes a liberation. It is a profound relief to know that our feelings of stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction are not a personal failure. We are not alone in this. We are part of a shared human condition. Acknowledging dukkha is pulling the first arrow out and looking at it clearly. It is the end of denial and the beginning of wisdom. It allows us to meet our own pain with compassion rather than with fear. And once we have looked this truth squarely in the face, a new question naturally and urgently arises. If this is the diagnosis, what is the cause? If so much of our suffering comes from that second arrow, where exactly does that second arrow come from? Why do we insist on shooting ourselves with it over and over again? This inquiry leads us directly to the heart of the matter, to the second noble truth, which reveals the origin of all our restlessness. Having looked with gentle courage at the diagnosis of our shared human condition, the pervasive sense of unease we call dukkha, we arrive at the vital next question. If dukkha is the illness, what is its cause? If our suffering is a second arrow, where does it come from? Why do we, time and time again, inflict this extra layer of pain upon ourselves? The Buddha, in his role as the great physician, answers this with breathtaking clarity in the second noble truth. He states that the origin of dukkha has a specific, identifiable cause. This cause is a Pali word, tanha. It is often translated as craving or desire, but its essence is closer to the word thirst. Think of the feeling of intense thirst on a hot day. It is a powerful, driving, consuming force. It is a deep-felt sense of lack, a burning need to pull something from the outside world into yourself, to relieve a feeling of inner emptiness. This is tanha. It is the engine of the monkey mind. It is the force that keeps the monkey leaping from branch to branch, always searching, never satisfied. This thirst is the source of the second arrow. It is the hand that draws the bowstring. To understand this thirst is to understand the very root of our anxiety and our restlessness. This is not a simple monolithic force. Tanha manifests in our lives in three distinct but interconnected ways. The first and most easily recognizable is kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving for things that feel good, taste good, sound good, smell good, and look good. It is the desire for a more delicious meal, a more luxurious car, a more beautiful partner, a more entertaining show. It is the engine of our consumer society. Every advertisement you see is a carefully crafted arrow of kamatana, designed to create a sense of lack within you, a thirst that can only be quenched, they promise, by their product. The endless scroll on our social media feeds is a perfect expression of this thirst. With every flick of the thumb, we are hunting for the next pleasing image, the next funny video, the next hit of dopamine. We are like thirsty travelers in a desert, chasing a mirage of satisfaction. We get a temporary relief when we attain the object of our desire, but the nature of thirst is that it always returns. The satisfaction is fleeting, the pleasure fades, And soon the gnawing feeling of lack is back, pushing us to seek the next thing, and the next, in an exhausting, unending cycle. The second form of thirst is deeper, more subtle, and for many of us, more powerful. It is called bhava tanha, the thirst to become. This is not just a craving for a thing or a sensation, but a craving for an identity, for a state of being. It is the burning desire to be something other than what we are in this moment. It is the thirst to be more successful, to be wealthier, to be more popular, to be seen as intelligent or virtuous, or even to be more spiritual. It is the engine of personal ambition, which can be healthy, but it is also the source of profound anxiety. Bhava tanha fuels the feeling that I am not enough as I am. It creates a constant, low-level stress of striving, of needing to improve, of having to build and maintain a certain image of ourselves. It is the voice that whispers, once I get that promotion, then I will be secure. Once I lose 10 pounds, then I will be happy. Once I find the perfect partner, then my life will be complete. This thirst for a future, idealized self makes the present moment and our present self seem fundamentally deficient. We are always living in the future, chasing a version of ourselves that is forever just over the horizon, and we are therefore never at peace with where and who we are right now. The third form of thirst is the shadow of the other two. It is called vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-existence, or the craving to get rid of something. If kamatana is pulling things toward us, vibhava tanha is violently pushing things away. It is the intense desire for an unpleasant experience to cease. When you feel a surge of anxiety, the immediate, desperate thought, I want this feeling to go away, is vibhava tanha. When you are bored, the frantic search for a distraction, binge watching a series, mindlessly eating, endlessly scrolling through your phonies, a manifestation of this thirst to annihilate the uncomfortable feeling of boredom. This aversion, this get it away from me energy, is just as much a form of craving as the desire for pleasure. It is a craving for a state of not feeling. Paradoxically, the more we try to push a feeling away, the more power we give it. By fighting anxiety, we feed it with our attention and fear. By running from our sadness, we ensure it will chase us. This form of thirst can also manifest in its most extreme forms as the desire for self-annihilation, the feeling that the pain of existence is so great that only a complete cessation of being could bring relief. It is a profound and tragic expression of the same fundamental mechanism, the inability to be with reality as it is. When we look at our world through the lens of these three thirsts, we can see that we are living in a tanha-generating machine. Our economy depends on stimulating kama tanha. Our social structures, built on hierarchy and competition, are rocket fuel for bhava tanha. And our culture of distraction and instant gratification offers 1,000 temporary balms for vibhava tanha, ensuring we never have to sit still and face our own discomfort. We also see that this attachment is not just for things or states. We become deeply attached to our views, our opinions, our beliefs. We cling to our identity as right and defend it with anger, creating conflict and separation. Most subtly, we can even become attached to our own suffering. Our anxiety can become such a familiar part of our identity that the thought of letting it go can feel terrifying. The stories we tell ourselves, I am an anxious person, I've always been a bit depressed, become a strange, painful comfort zone, a role we cling to because we don't know who we would be without it. There is an old Buddhist story that captures the tragic, self-perpetuating nature of tanha perfectly. It is the story of a stray dog, starving and desperate. One day, it finds a bone on the side of a dusty road. The bone has been picked clean by vultures and bleached white by the sun. There is not a single shred of meat or marrow left on it. But the dog, driven by its hunger, begins to gnaw on it frantically. It chews and chews, its teeth scraping against the dry bone, but it gets no nourishment. After some time, it tastes a flavor, a rich, metallic taste. The dog's mind, deluded by its craving, thinks, "Aha, I am finally getting something from this bone." This thought gives it renewed energy, and it begins to chew with even more desperation, convinced that if it just tries harder, it will get the sustenance it needs. But the taste it perceives is not coming from the bone. The taste is the flavor of its own blood, from its gums being scraped raw and torn by the very object it believes will save it. We, in our unexamined lives, are that dog. The dry bone is the object of our craving, the fleeting pleasure, the promotion, the validation from others, things that are inherently empty of lasting satisfaction. Our frantic chewing is our endless striving, our life of chasing and grasping. And the taste of blood is the painful, agitating excitement of the chase itself, a temporary jolt of energy that we mistake for genuine happiness, a pleasure that is, in fact, derived from our own self-inflicted wound. This is the diagnosis of the cause of our suffering. Dukkha does not arise from a punishing God, or from bad luck, or from the world itself. It arises from within. It is born from this deep, insatiable thirst. Now, this realization could be cause for despair, a reason for guilt and self-blame. But in the context of the Four Noble Truths, it is the opposite. It is the most hopeful news in the world. It is the turning point. It means that our suffering is not a random, meaningless affliction. It has a cause, and that cause can be understood. And if a cause can be understood, it can be addressed. If the disease is not terminal, but is instead caused by a specific, identifiable agent, then a cure can be devised. By clearly seeing the origin of the second arrow, by understanding the mechanism of tanha, we realize something astonishing. We hold the bow. We are not fated to a life of endless, unsatisfying thirst. This profound understanding brings us to the threshold of the third noble truth, raising the most vital question of all. If this thirst can be understood, can it also be released? Is there a state of being that is free from this constant craving? Is a genuine, lasting peace actually possible? We have walked together into the heart of our own unease. We have stood before the first noble truth, acknowledging with gentle honesty the reality of dukkha, the pervasive dissatisfaction of our lives. Then, we turn to face the second noble truth, uncovering its source in the relentless, burning thirst of tanha, the craving that fuels our inner monkey mind. And standing here, between a diagnosis of unease and its clearly identified cause, we are faced with the most important question a human being can ask. Are we destined to suffer? Are we doomed to be forever tormented by this thirst? Forever gnawing on the dry bone of our desires? Forever shot by the second arrow of our own making? It is here, at this critical juncture, that the Buddha delivers the most liberating, the most profoundly hopeful message ever offered. The answer is a clear, compassionate, and unwavering no. There is an end to suffering. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha, which means cessation. It is the truth that a state of perfect peace, of complete freedom from the fever of craving, is not a fantasy, but an attainable human reality. Before we explore what this cessation is, it is vital to understand what it is not. For many in the modern world, the word cessation can sound frightening. It brings to mind images of nothingness, of a cold, empty void, of the annihilation of the self. This is a profound misunderstanding. The state of peace the Buddha pointed to, called nirvana, is not the extinguishing of you. It is the extinguishing of the fire that is tormenting you. It is the cessation of greed, the cessation of hatred, and the cessation of delusion. It is not the end of life, but the end of the struggle with life. Imagine you have been suffering from a high fever for many days. Your body aches. Your mind is delirious. You are hot and agitated. Then, a physician gives you a medicine that finally breaks the fever. The heat subsides, the delirium clears, the aching ceases. Is this cessation of fever a state of nothingness? No, it is a state of health. It is the return to your natural state of well-being, a state that was always present, but was simply obscured by the illness. Nirodha is the curing of the fever of tanha. Nirvana is the cool, clear, peaceful state of health that is revealed when that fever is gone. It is the deep, clear lake, finally settled after the mud of craving has been allowed to sink to the bottom. It is the vast, open sky of the mind, after the storm clouds of our afflictions have passed. It is freedom. It is an unshakable peace that does not depend on external conditions being perfect. Perhaps the most powerful metaphor for this process is that of a fire. Think of the mind in the grip of tanha as a blazing fire. It is agitated, constantly flickering and dancing. It is hot, a state of dis-ease and irritation. And it is consuming, always demanding more fuel to keep itself going. The fuel is the objects of our senses, our ambitions, our fears. We run around frantically, throwing more logs onto the fire, more possessions, more experiences, more distractions in a desperate attempt to satisfy it, not realizing that the fuel is the very thing that keeps the fire of our suffering blazing. The path of wisdom does not ask you to fight the fire. It asks you to simply stop feeding it, to stop throwing the logs of craving and attachment onto it. And what happens when you stop feeding a fire? It does not disappear into a black hole. It begins to calm down. The roaring subsides into a gentle crackle. The frantic, leaping flames shrink and soften. The intense, consuming heat dissipates, replaced by a gentle, radiating warmth. Eventually, the last flame flickers out, leaving behind glowing embers and a profound sense of stillness. This state of coolness is the literal meaning of the word nirvana. It is not a cold, dead emptiness. It is a peaceful, radiant, and stable warmth, a deep and profound serenity that is revealed only when the agitation of the fire has ceased. This coolness was there all along, hidden beneath the flames. Peace is our fundamental nature. Another common misconception is that nirvana is a kind of heavenly paradise, a reward you get after you die if you live a good life. The Buddha's message was far more radical and immediate than that. Nirodha, the cessation of suffering, is a psychological reality that can be experienced right here, in this very life, in this very body. You do not have to wait. In fact, you have likely already had fleeting glimpses of it. Think of a time you were completely absorbed in a creative act, painting, playing music, writing, so absorbed that your sense of a separate, striving self completely disappeared. For that period, the monkey mind was silent. That was a moment of nirodha. Think of a time you stood on a mountaintop or looked at the ocean, and for a moment, you felt a sense of awe so profound that all your petty worries and anxieties simply fell away. That was a moment of nirvana. Think of a moment of pure, selfless love for another being, a moment when your only wish was for their happiness. free from any desire for something in return. In that moment, the fire of selfish craving was cooled. These are not small or insignificant experiences. They are windows into our true potential. They are proof that a mind free from the tyranny of tanha is not only possible, it is something our hearts already recognize and yearn for. The path is simply about learning how to stabilize that state, how to move from accidental glimpses of peace to an abiding, intentional way of being. This naturally leads to a very practical question. If we have to extinguish the fire of craving, does that mean we have to become passionless robots? Must we eliminate all desire and become completely apathetic to life? This is a crucial point, and the teachings offer a brilliant and subtle distinction. The path is not about eliminating all desire, but about transforming its quality. The teachings differentiate between two kinds of desire, tanha and chanda. As we know, tanha is the unhealthy, ego-driven, anxious craving that is rooted in a sense of lack. It is the thought, I must have this thing to be happy, and it always leads to attachment and eventual disappointment. Chanda, on the other hand, is a wholesome, skillful kind of desire. It is better translated as an aspiration, a positive intention, or the will to act. Chanda is the desire to walk to the kitchen to get a glass of water when you are thirsty. It is the desire of a parent to care for their child. It is the desire of a student to learn, of an artist to create, of a healer to help. Most importantly, the desire to free oneself from suffering, the desire to practice mindfulness, the desire to cultivate compassion, the desire to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. This is chanda. It is the very energy that propels us along the path. So, the goal is not to become desireless. It is to gradually let go of the grasping, selfish energy of tanha and to cultivate the generous, life-affirming energy of chanda. We learn to redirect the powerful river of our desire away from the barren salt flats of selfish craving and toward the fertile fields of wisdom and compassion. The third noble truth, then, is the ultimate proclamation of hope. It is the North Star of our spiritual journey. It tells us that the prison of our anxiety, the cage of our restlessness, has a door, and that door is not locked. Freedom is not a myth. Peace is not just a word. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer fueled by the fires of grasping and aversion. It is the coolness that remains when the fever breaks. It is the quiet health of the soul. The fact that such a state is possible for a human being to achieve is the most optimistic news one could ever receive. It gives meaning to our struggles and illuminates our path. It assures us that our efforts are not in vain. A deep and lasting peace is possible. And so, with this profound promise echoing in our hearts, we are naturally filled with a sense of hopeful determination. If this cure is real, if this state of cool, clear peace is attainable, then how do we get there? What is the medicine? What is the map that leads us from the frantic, fiery landscape of tanha to the cool, peaceful shore of nirvana? This brings us to the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths. It is the detailed, step-by-step guide for the journey itself, the Noble Eightfold Path. We have journeyed through a profound landscape together. We began with the first noble truth, the honest recognition of our own disease, our dukkha. We then turned to face its source in the second noble truth, the relentless, burning thirst of tanha. And just as we might have felt the weight of this diagnosis, a brilliant light of hope appeared with the third noble truth, the promise of nirodha, the complete cessation of this suffering, and the possibility of an unshakable peace called nirvana. A promise, however beautiful, is not enough. A destination, however desirable, is unreachable without a map. If a physician tells you your illness is curable, your very next question is, what is the prescription? What do I need to do? The Buddha, the great physician, anticipated this question, and his answer is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path itself. This is the practical, tangible, how-to guide that leads from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace. In the Pali language, this is Magga, the path. It is known as the Noble Eightfold Path, a sublime and comprehensive design for human flourishing, a set of instructions for living a life of wisdom, integrity, and profound mental clarity. Before we walk onto this path and examine its 8 components, we must first understand the spirit in which it is to be traveled. This is the spirit of the middle way. The Buddha did not arrive at this understanding through philosophical speculation alone, but through his own lived experience. As a young prince, he had lived in the extreme of sensual indulgence, surrounded by every imaginable pleasure, only to find it left him feeling empty and spiritually starved. Then, upon leaving his palace, he dove into the opposite extreme, that of severe asceticism. He starved his body, held his breath until his head felt like it would split, and pushed himself to the absolute limits of self-mortification, only to find that a weakened body leads to a weakened mind, and that torturing himself brought him no closer to the truth. Near death from these extreme practices, he remembered a moment from his childhood, sitting peacefully under a rose apple tree, experiencing a state of natural, effortless joy. He realized then that neither self-indulgence nor self-torture was the way. The truth must lie somewhere in the middle. The famous story that illustrates this realization is that of the lute player. The Buddha understood that the mind is like the string of a lute. If you tighten the string too much, with harsh, aggressive effort, it will snap. If you leave the string too loose, with lazy indifference, it will produce no sound at all. Only when the string is tuned just right, not too tight, not too loosey, can it produce beautiful, harmonious music. The Noble Eightfold Path is this middle way. It is a path of balance, of skillful and intelligent engagement with our lives, avoiding the dead ends of laxity and aggression. Now, as we look at the 8 factors of this path, it is crucial to avoid a common misunderstanding. The name Eightfold Path can make it sound like a sequence of 8 steps, a ladder we must climb one rung at a time. This is not the case. It is far more accurate to think of the path not as a ladder, but as a beautiful, interwoven tapestry. Each of the 8 threads is woven together, each one supporting and strengthening all the others simultaneously. Or, imagine a strong rope braided from 8 individual strands. The strength of the rope comes from the interplay of all the strands together. A single strand is weak, but braided together, they are unbreakable. For example, our ability to practice right speech is immeasurably enhanced when we are also practicing right mindfulness. Our commitment to right action is guided and sustained by our cultivation of right view. Every part of the path informs every other part. They are meant to be developed in concert, creating a powerful, virtuous cycle that spirals upwards towards liberation. To make this elegant system easier to understand, the 8 factors are traditionally grouped into 3 essential categories, known as the threefold training. These are ethical conduct, or sila, mental discipline, or samadhi, and wisdom, or prajna. Let us briefly look at these groupings. The first is the training in wisdom, prajna. This is the seeing and intending part of the path, our compass, and our motivation. It consists of 2 factors: right view which is the correct understanding of the nature of reality, seeing things as they truly are, in line with the Four Noble Truths, and right intention, which is the purification of our will, aligning our hearts with intentions of kindness, compassion, and renunciation, rather than greed, hatred, and cruelty. The second training is in ethical conduct, sila. This is how we manifest our inner understanding in our outer actions in the world. It is the practice of harmlessness and integrity, and it consists of three factors. First is right speech, which means refraining from lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter, and instead cultivating speech that is truthful, kind, helpful, and harmonious. Second is right action, which means refraining from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and instead acting with honesty, respect, and compassion for all life. Third is right livelihood, which means earning a living in a way that does not cause harm to oneself or others. This ethical training is not about following a set of rigid rules to earn good karma points. It is a very practical recognition that when we live with integrity, our minds become calm, peaceful, and free from the poison of regret. A mind free from regret is the essential foundation for the next stage of training. This brings us to the third training, in mental discipline, samadhi. This is the deep, inner work of training the mind itself. It consists of the final three factors. First is right effort, which is the joyful, persistent energy we bring to the path, the effort to let go of unwholesome states and to cultivate wholesome ones. Second, and at the very heart of the practice, is right mindfulness, the ability to pay attention to the present moment with clarity and non-judgmental awareness, observing our body, our feelings, and our thoughts without getting swept away by them. And third is right concentration, the ability to collect and unify the mind, to develop a stability and focus so powerful that it can penetrate the deepest truths of existence. These three trainings form a beautiful, self-reinforcing loop. A life of ethical conduct, sila, creates a peaceful conscience, which is the perfect ground for developing deep mental discipline, samadhi, a mind that is calm, focused, and stable through samadhi becomes a powerful instrument, like a microscope or a telescope, that can see reality with profound clarity, thus giving rise to true wisdom, prajna. And as our wisdom deepens, it naturally informs and purifies our conduct in the world, our sila, which in turn supports deeper concentration, which leads to greater wisdom. This is the upward spiral that leads directly to the coolness of nirvana. This path is a comprehensive blueprint for living. It is not just for ascetics in a monastery. It is a path designed for every human being, right in the midst of our messy, complicated, modern lives. It touches everything: how we think when we open our eyes in the morning, how we speak to our loved ones over breakfast, how we behave in our workplace, how we consume and interact with the world, and how we sit with ourselves in the quiet moments. It is a path of continuous practice and cultivation, not one of perfection. There is no failure on this path, only the compassionate, patient act of beginning again, moment by moment. So now, we have the complete teaching, the diagnosis, the cause, the prognosis, and finally, the prescription. The fourth noble truth is the Buddha's ultimate gift. It is the map placed gently into our hands. It assures us that we are not lost. It tells us that there are concrete, specific things we can do, starting today, to walk out of the prison of our own anxiety and into the open field of peace. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and so, our journey along this path We'll begin with its very foundation, the bedrock upon which all else is built. We will begin with the training in wisdom and explore the first essential factor, the cultivation of right view. We now stand at the trailhead of the noble Eightfold Path, the practical map that leads from suffering to peace. We have seen that this path is not a rigid sequence of steps, but a beautiful tapestry of interwoven practices. And the very first thread, the foundational color that gives context and clarity to all the others, is called right view. In the Pali language, this is samma ditthi. Before we can walk in the right direction, we must first be able to see the landscape clearly. Before we can navigate the terrain of our lives skillfully, we must first orient our inner compass to the true north of reality. Right view is this compass. It is the clarifying lens through which we learn to see ourselves and the world, not as we wish they were, or as we fear they might be, but as they truly are. It is the essential foundation of wisdom, and without it, our efforts on the rest of the path would be misguided and weak. It is absolutely crucial to understand that right view is not about adopting a new set of beliefs. It is not a dogma you must accept with blind faith. In fact, the Buddha was famously skeptical of blind faith, encouraging his followers to question everything and to see for themselves. Right view is not a belief system. It is a clarity system. It is the process of shedding the distorted lenses of illusion and ignorance that cause us so much pain. At its core, right view is the deep, experiential understanding of the fundamental laws of nature, particularly the three marks of existence. These are the three universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. The first is anicca, or impermanence. This is the truth that everything is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is static. Your body is changing with every breath. Your thoughts are a flowing river. Your emotions arise and pass away like clouds. The seasons change. Relationships evolve. Civilizations rise and fall. This constant flow is the fundamental nature of reality. The second mark is dukkha, which we have already explored. It is the truth of unsatisfactoriness. Because everything is impermanent and in a state of flux, any attempt to cling to things as if they were solid and lasting will inevitably lead to a sense of friction, stress, and disappointment. When we try to hold on to pleasure, we suffer when it fades. When we try to push away pain, we suffer when it persists. This isn't a flaw in the world. It's a flaw in our approach to the world. The third mark is perhaps the most profound and challenging. It is anatta, or not self. This is the insight that within this constantly changing stream of mind and body, there is no fixed, solid, independent I or soul to be found. What we call our self is, in reality, a dynamic, interdependent process, a temporary collection of physical and mental components. The idea of a separate, permanent self, who is the master of our experience, is the ultimate illusion. These three marks impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self are not pessimistic statements. They are liberating truths. Seeing them clearly is like finally being given the correct operating manual for your own life. To understand the power of right view, it is helpful to look at its opposite, wrong view, or misha ditta. Wrong view is the fog of delusion through which most of us navigate our lives. It is the direct cause of the second arrow, the source of our self-inflicted suffering. For instance, the belief that lasting happiness can be found through acquiring possessions, status, or external validation is a primary form of wrong view. It fuels the insatiable thirst of tanha and sends us on an endless, exhausting chase for the next thing that will finally make us happy, which it never does. The belief that this feeling of anxiety I have right now will last forever is another form of wrong view. It is a denial of impermanence, anicca. By believing the feeling is a permanent fixture, we give it immense power and fall into despair, shooting ourselves with the second arrow of hopelessness. When we identify completely with our roles or our stories, I am a failure because I lost my job, or I am an unlovable person, we are lost in the wrong view of a solid, permanent self. We are denying anatta. This creates immense suffering as we desperately try to defend and protect a self that is, in reality, just a fleeting concept. Wrong view is the distorted lens that makes us see threats where there is only change, and that convinces us to fight a reality that can never be defeated. There is a powerful story from the Buddhist tradition that beautifully illustrates the transformative journey from the agony of wrong view to the peace of right view. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. Her life was shattered when her only child, a young boy, fell ill and died. Overcome with a grief so powerful, it drove her to madness. She refused to accept his death. She picked up his small body and wandered through her village, going from house to house, desperately begging everyone she met for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help her. Finally, a wise man saw her profound suffering and directed her to the Buddha. Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded, "Can you make him well?" The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can, but first, you must do one thing for me. Go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one and no child, no parent, no spouse, no servantess ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search once more. At the first house, a woman answered the door. "Can you spare me a mustard seed?" Kisa Gotami asked. "Of course," the woman said. "But tell me, has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face grew sad. "Oh yes," she replied. "I lost my beloved husband just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Everyone was willing to give her a mustard seed, but every single family had been touched by death. One had lost a parent, another had lost a sibling, another, a dear friend. As she went from door to door, a profound transformation began to take place within her. Her focus shifted from her own, personal, isolating grief to a deep and widening understanding of the shared human condition. She realized that death was not a unique punishment that had been visited upon her alone. It was a universal law of nature. Her personal tragedy was part of a universal truth. In that moment of seeing, her frantic clinging began to soften. She went to the outskirts of the village, gently laid her son's body down, and returned to the Buddha. He looked at her and asked, "Did you bring the mustard seed?" And she replied, softly, "No, Lord. I now understand. The living are few, but the dead are many." Kisa Gotami's journey was not just a search for a mustard seed. It was the cultivation of right view. She did not gain this wisdom by reading a book. She gained it through her own direct, lived experience. And with that shift in seeing came the beginning of her peace. So how do we, in our own lives, cultivate this right view? It is a practice, one that unfolds, both in quiet contemplation and in the midst of our daily activities. It begins by reflecting on these core principles: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. We can read about them, listen to teachings about them, and turn them over in our minds. But reflection must be paired with observation. This is where mindfulness becomes the tool of right view. When a strong emotion like anger or anxiety arises, instead of becoming the anger, can you step back and observe it? Can you notice that the feeling is not a solid thing? It has a beginning, it swells to a peak, and if you just watch it without feeding it, it will eventually subside. This is the direct, personal observation of Anika. When you find yourself caught in a story about me, I'm not good enough, I always mess things up, can you gently challenge this I? What is it, really? Is it your body, which is always changing? Is it your thoughts, which are fleeting? Is it your feelings, which are impermanent? This gentle inquiry is the practice of seeing anatta. When you experience a moment of great joy, can you savor it fully without the anxious need to make it last forever? Can you enjoy the warmth of the sun on your skin without worrying about the clouds that will eventually come? This is the skillful application of right view, living in harmony with reality instead of at war with it. Right view, then, is the foundation. It is the clearing of the fog. It is the act of adjusting our inner map to align with the actual territory of life. It provides the profound why behind all the other practices of the path. It is the wisdom that understands that ethical conduct is not about following rules, but about reducing the causes of suffering for ourselves and others. It is the wisdom that understands that mental training is not about achieving a blissful state, but about creating a mind clear enough to see the truth. Once our view begins to clear, once our compass is no longer spinning wildly, but is pointing steadily toward the true north of reality, then our choices about how to proceed become infused with a new intelligence. A clear view of the world naturally gives rise to a wise intention for how to live within it. And this brings us to the second thread in the tapestry of wisdom: right intention. With our inner compass of right view beginning to point toward the true north of reality, we are now oriented. We can see the landscape more clearly, freed from the worst of the fog of our illusions. But a map, however accurate, is useless until we decide where we want to go. A compass only has value when we have a destination in mind. This is where the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path comes into play. It is called right intention, or Samma Sankappa. If right view is the wisdom of the head, the clear seeing, then right intention is the wisdom of the heart, the deep and purposeful aiming. It is the rudder of our ship. It is the conscious and skillful choice of what we want to cultivate in our minds. A choice that will determine the entire flavor and direction of our lives. It is the critical pivot point between our understanding and our actions. The moment we decide what to do with what we see. The Buddha taught that our intentions are like seeds that we plant in the fertile ground of our minds. An unwholesome intention planted in the mind will inevitably sprout into unwholesome actions and words, which will then bear the bitter fruit of suffering for ourselves and others. A wholesome intention, on the other hand, will sprout into skillful actions and words, bearing the sweet fruit of peace, happiness, and liberation. The practice of right intention is the gentle art of learning to distinguish between these seeds and consciously choosing to plant only those that lead to our own and others' welfare. The teachings identify three distinct streams of right intention, three wholesome currents we can choose to align ourselves with. The first is the intention of renunciation, or nekama. This word can sound severe to modern ears, bringing up images of giving up all worldly pleasures. But its true meaning is far more subtle and liberating. It means the intention of letting go. It is the intention to release our tight-fisted, white-knuckled grip on things, people, and outcomes. It is the intention to renounce our addiction to the drama of the monkey mind, to let go of our obsessive need for more, to release the very craving, the tanha, that causes our suffering in our daily lives. This is the quiet intention to let go of the need to be right in an argument, to let go of replaying an old grievance, to let go of anxiously checking our phone for a message. It is a movement towards inner freedom and simplicity. It is not about depriving yourself of joy. It is about renouncing the very things that prevent you from experiencing a deeper, more stable joy. The second stream is the intention of goodwill, or avyapada. This is the direct antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, resentment, and irritation. It is the active cultivation of what is known as metta, or loving kindness. It is the sincere and heartfelt wish that all beings, without exception, be happy and well. This includes others, and just as importantly, it includes ourselves. This intention actively counters the mind's default tendency towards judgment and criticism. When someone cuts you off in traffic, the habitual intention is one of anger and ill will. The practice of right intention is to consciously replace that with a wish for that person to be safe and free from the stress that made them drive so recklessly. When you make a mistake, the habitual intention of the inner critic is to berate and belittle you. The practice of right intention is to meet your own failure with the wish, may I be kind to myself, may I learn from this, and be at peace. It is a radical shift from a mindset of hostility to one of friendship with all of life. The third stream of skillful intention is the intention of harmlessness, or avihisa. This is the intention of karuna, or compassion, while goodwill is the wish for others to be happy. Harmlessness is the profound wish for all beings, including ourselves, to be free from suffering. It is the foundation of empathy. It is the recognition of our shared vulnerability. This intention goes far beyond the obvious act of refraining from physical violence. It is the intention not to harm with our words, not to harm with our business practices, not to harm through our indifference. It is the choice to walk through the world with a gentle presence, aware that our actions have consequences, and intending for those consequences to be as healing and helpful as possible. To cultivate this intention is to soften the hard edges of our own ego and to feel our profound connection to the web of all life. To truly appreciate the beauty of these wholesome intentions, it helps to see their dark reflections. The opposites of these three are the sources of so much of our anxiety and conflict. The opposite of renunciation is the intention of grasping and sensual desire, the thought that I must possess this to be happy. The opposite of goodwill is the intention of ill will, the bitter seed of resentment and revenge that poisons our own heart. And the opposite of harmlessness is the intention of cruelty and violence, the cold indifference or even pleasure in the pain of others. These unwholesome intentions are the very blueprint for the second arrow. They are the choices that lead us directly into the thorny bushes of anxiety, guilt, and conflict. Let us consider a simple parable. Imagine two builders, both tasked with constructing a house. The first builder works with the intention of becoming rich and famous. His mind is filled with thoughts of personal gain. He constantly compares his work to that of rival builders, feeling envy and anxiety. He worries endlessly about what the critics will say. He is tempted to cut corners on materials to increase his profit margin. For him, the process of building is a source of constant stress, competition, and fear. The house may get built, but his heart finds no peace in the process. Now imagine the second builder, She works with the intention of creating a safe, strong, and beautiful home for a family to live in. Her mind is focused on the well-being of the future inhabitants. She chooses her materials with care. She takes pride in her craftsmanship. She finds a deep and quiet joy in the act of creation itself. The external action for both builders is the same. They are building a house, but their internal experience of that action is worlds apart. One lives in a hell of his own making, fueled by the intention of grasping and ego. The other lives in a heaven of her own making, sustained by the intention of goodwill and harmlessness. Every day, every moment, we are builders. The question is, what kind of house are we building with our lives? And what is the intention that guides our hands? This practice of purifying our intention is not an abstract, philosophical exercise. It is a practical, moment-to-moment training. One of the most powerful ways to begin is to set a clear intention in the morning. Before you pick up your phone, before the world rushes in, take just 1 minute to sit quietly, take a few deep breaths, and consciously plant a seed for your day. It can be very simple. Today, may my intention be to listen with patience. Today, may I meet my own anxiety with kindness. Today, may I let go of the small irritations and focus on gratitude. This simple act sets the rudder for your mind. It creates a reference point of wisdom that you can return to throughout the day. Then, in the midst of your day, you can practice what is sometimes called the sacred pause. When you find yourself in a difficult conversation, or about to send an angry email, or overwhelmed with stress, you can just pause. For the space of one breath, you can ask yourself, what is my intention right now? Am I intending to prove I am right, or to find a resolution? Am I intending to wound, or to heal? Am I intending to create more conflict, or more peace? Simply asking the question can be enough to shift you out of a reactive, unconscious pattern and into a conscious, wise choice. Right intention, therefore, is the act of consciously aligning the energy of our heart with the clarity of our view. It is the active ingredient that transforms understanding into a living practice. It ensures that our journey is not just a cold, intellectual exercise, but a warm, heartfelt path of transformation. When our seeing is clear and our heart is aimed steadfastly towards freedom, kindness, and compassion, our whole being begins to move in that direction. A pure spring cannot help but produce pure water. In the same way, a purified intention cannot help but express itself in the world through what we do and, first and foremost, through what we say. This beautiful alignment of head and heart now leads us out of the realm of inner wisdom and into the world of action, beginning with the first and most powerful way we interact with others, the practice of right speech. As we begin to align our lives with a right view of the world and a right intention in our hearts, we arrive at a very practical question. How does this inner transformation manifest in our outer world? The wisdom of the head and the warmth of the heart must find expression through our actions. The Buddhist path understands that this expression begins with our most common, powerful, and often unconscious form of action, our speech. This is the practice of right speech, or samavacha, the first pillar of the training in ethical conduct, or sila. Our words are not mere sounds. They are potent forces. They can be weapons that inflict deep and lasting wounds, or they can be instruments of healing that soothe, comfort, and inspire. They can build walls of separation, or they can build bridges of connection. Every word we speak is a seed we plant in the mind of another, and just as importantly, in the garden of our own mind. Right speech is the gentle, mindful practice of learning to sow only seeds of peace, clarity, and kindness. It is not a list of repressive rules, but a form of verbal generosity, a way of bringing our communication into harmony with our deepest intention to be free from suffering. The teachings offer us a beautiful and comprehensive guide to this practice, outlining 4 aspects of skillful speech. It is a path of both restraint and cultivation, learning what to avoid and what to develop. The first gate of right speech is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling lies, but it goes deeper than that. It includes the subtle forms of dishonesty we often engage in, exaggeration, to make a story more interesting, making promises we don't intend to keep, giving misleading compliments, or speaking half-truths to avoid responsibility. To speak truthfully is to align our words with reality. When we lie, we create a second, false reality that we must then expend enormous mental energy to maintain. This creates a state of inner conflict, a split within ourselves that is a profound source of anxiety. We live in fear of being found out. Truthfulness, on the other hand, creates a life of radical simplicity. When our words and our reality are one, the mind can be at ease. There is nothing to hide, nothing to defend. This kind of integrity is a prerequisite for inner peace. The second gate is to abstain from divisive speech. This is speech that is intended to set one person against another, to create discord and enmity. It is the act of slander, of carrying tales, of speaking ill of someone who is not present. In our modern world, this gate is more important than ever. It is the venom of anonymous online comments, the self-righteousness of political polarization that paints the other side as monstrous, and the subtle poison of office gossip that erodes trust and creates a climate of suspicion. The skillful alternative is to cultivate speech that unites and harmonizes. It is to speak in a way that highlights our shared humanity, that seeks to find common ground, that encourages reconciliation. It is the conscious choice not to participate in conversations that tear people down, but instead to use our words to build understanding and empathy. The third gate is to abstain from harsh speech. This includes the obvious forms of verbal abuse: shouting, cursing, insulting, and threatening. But it also includes the more subtle barbs of sarcasm, belittling humor, sharp criticism, and passive-aggressive remarks. These words are like throwing stones. Even if we say we are just kidding, they land with a weight and can leave invisible bruises on the heart of another. More than that, they harden our own heart. A mind that habitually uses harsh speech becomes a mind that is accustomed to hostility and aggression. The cultivation of right speech here is the practice of speaking gently, kindly, and affectionately. It is choosing words that are pleasing to the ear and endearing, as the Buddha said. This gentleness must also be turned inward. For many of us, the harshest words we hear all day are from our own inner critic, which constantly berates us for our perceived flaws. Right speech is learning to speak to ourselves with the same kindness and encouragement we would offer a dear friend. The fourth and final gate is to abstain from idle chatter. This is not a command to be grimly silent all the time. It is an invitation to be mindful of pointless, aimless talk that serves no real purpose other than to fill silence or to agitate the mind. This is the verbal equivalent of the monkey mind, leaping from branch to branch. It includes endless complaining, which rewires our brain to see only the negative. It includes speculative gossip about the lives of celebrities or acquaintances. It is the constant stream of mental noise made audible. When we engage in idle chatter, we are depleting our own mental energy and the energy of those who are listening. The skillful alternative is to speak words that are purposeful and beneficial. This doesn't mean we can only talk about deep philosophy. A light-hearted conversation that brings joy and connection is deeply purposeful. The key is intention. Is our speech mindful and meaningful, or is it just noise? A crucial part of right speech, often overlooked, is not about speaking at all. It is the practice of deep listening. Most of the time, when we are in a conversation, we are not truly listening. We are waiting for our turn to speak, formulating our response, judging what the other person is saying, and listening through the filter of our own opinions and biases. Deep listening, as taught by masters like Thich Nhat Hanh, is an act of compassion. It is listening with only one purpose: to help the other person empty their heart and feel the relief of being truly heard. It is offering the rare and precious gift of our full, non-judgmental presence. In deep listening, we set aside our own agenda and create a space of safety for the other person to express themselves. This act, in itself, can be more healing than any words we could ever offer. To help us navigate these four gates in our daily lives, there is a wonderful story from ancient Greece about the philosopher Socrates, which serves as a perfect practical guide. One day, an acquaintance ran up to Socrates, bursting with news. "Socrates," he said, "I have to tell you something. I just heard about one of your friends." Socrates held up his hand and said, "Wait. Before you tell me, I would like you to pass your news through 3 small sieves. The first sieve is truth. Are you absolutely certain that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Well, no. I just heard it from someone else." Socrates nodded. "All right, let's try the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me something good or kind?" The man hesitated. "No, actually, it's quite the opposite." Socrates continued. "So, you are not sure if it's true, and it is not good. Let us try the third sieve, the sieve of usefulness. Is this information useful or necessary for me to know?" The man shook his head. "No, not really." Socrates then smiled gently and said, "Well then, if the story you wish to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why tell it to me, or to anyone, at all? These 3 sieves, is it true? Is it kind? Is it useful? Are a perfect checklist for our speech. Before we speak, we can run our intended words through these gates. If they don't pass, then we have the opportunity to practice the most underrated aspect of right speech: noble silence. This is not an angry or awkward silence. It is a peaceful, wise, and conscious choice not to add more noise to the world. It is the recognition that in a world drowning in information and opinion, silence can be a profound offering of clarity and peace. Right speech, then, is a deep and transformative practice. It is the external application of our inner clarity and compassion. We are the first listeners to every word we utter, and our speech patterns have a profound effect on our own state of mind. When we speak with anger, we water the seed of anger in ourselves. When we complain, we deepen the grooves of negativity in our own brain. When we speak with kindness and truthfulness, we cultivate a mind of peace and integrity. By learning to tame our tongue, we are taming our own mind. This purification of our verbal conduct creates a foundation of harmony and non-regret, which naturally prepares us for the next, broader aspect of ethical living. From the words we say, we now turn to the things we do, moving seamlessly to the practice of right action. As our speech begins to soften and align with our intention for kindness and clarity, the path of ethical conduct naturally broadens to encompass our entire physical presence in the world. From the purification of our words, we move to the purification of our deeds. This is the practice of right action, or samma kammanta, the second pillar of sila. It is the deep and practical recognition that our physical actions, just like our words, are powerful seeds that we plant in the world and in our own consciousness. It is the commitment to live a life of integrity, a life where our outward behaviors are a true and beautiful reflection of our inner aspirations. When our actions are in harmony with our understanding, the mind becomes calm, confident, and free from the corrosive poisons of guilt and regret. This state of inner harmony is not a side effect of ethical living. It is its very purpose. The classical teachings on right action are presented with a beautiful simplicity, focusing on three fundamental areas of conduct. These are not meant to be rigid commandments, but rather wise and compassionate guidelines for navigating our lives in a way that minimizes harm and cultivates peace. The first guideline is to abstain from taking life. This is the most foundational principle of harmlessness. At its most obvious, it is a commitment not to kill other human beings, but its spirit extends much further. It is an invitation to cultivate a deep and abiding reverence for all life in all its forms. It is to recognize that every living being, from the largest whale to the smallest insect, shares the same fundamental desire we do, to live and to avoid suffering. This doesn't mean we can always avoid causing any harm whatsoever, as the simple act of walking or farming can unintentionally harm small creatures. But it is about the intention we hold in our heart. Do we move through the world with carelessness and a sense of dominance, or with mindfulness, respect, and a desire to protect life wherever we can? Cultivating this reverence softens the mind, diminishes our own aggressive tendencies, and connects us to the great interwoven web of existence. The second guideline is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the principle of refraining from stealing. Again, this extends far beyond armed robbery or burglary. It is a commitment to honesty and respect for the property and efforts of others. This includes not stealing from our workplace, whether that means taking office supplies or wasting hours of company time on personal matters. It includes respecting intellectual property and not plagiarizing the work of others. It involves being honest in our business dealings and our financial affairs. At its heart, to take what is not given is an act of grasping, an expression of the tanha that believes our happiness depends on acquiring more from the outside. The skillful practice to cultivate here is its direct opposite, generosity, or dana. The practice of giving, whether it is our time, our attention, our resources, or a simple smileys, a powerful antidote to the poison of greed. It loosens the grip of the ego and creates a mind filled with joy, connection, and abundance, rather than a mind of scarcity and lack. The third guideline is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is perhaps the most misunderstood of the precepts, and it is vital to approach it with modern wisdom and compassion. This is not a puritanical rejection of sexuality. It is a profound recognition that our sexual energy is a powerful force that must be wielded with great care, respect, and kindness. At its core, this precept is about not using our sexuality to cause harm to ourselves or to others. This means refraining from any sexual act that involves exploitation, coercion, or deceit. It is about honoring the commitments we have made and not causing the pain of betrayal. It is about ensuring that our sexual expression is rooted in mutual consent, honesty, and a genuine respect for the vulnerability and dignity of our partners. A sexual life that is grounded in these principles of kindness and respect leads to trust, intimacy, and connection. A life that ignores them inevitably leads to a mind filled with anxiety, guilt, fear, and the suffering that comes from causing harm to another human being. These ancient principles provide a powerful ethical foundation, but how do we apply them to the complexities of our 21st century lives? Right action calls us to look deeply at the consequences of all our behaviors. Consider our habits of consumption. When we buy a product, our action of purchasing it is the final link in a long chain. Is it possible that this product was made in a factory with exploitative labor practices, causing harm to workers far away? Was it produced in a way that pollutes the environment, harming ecosystems and future generations? Right action invites us to become conscious consumers, to make choices that, as much as possible, support life and do not contribute to suffering. It also calls us to examine our relationship with the planet. Our personal actions regarding waste, travel, and energy use have a collective impact. To live with the intention of harmlessness in today's world is to live with a sense of environmental stewardship, recognizing that the health of the planet and our own well-being are inseparable. Underpinning this entire framework is the natural law of cause and effect, known in the East as karma. It is essential to understand that karma is not a system of cosmic justice handed down by an external judge. There is no divine being keeping a scoreboard of our good and bad deeds. The law of karma is as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. The word karma literally means action or deed. The teaching simply states that every intentional action we perform with our body, our speech, or our mind is a seed. Wholesome actions, born from intentions of generosity, kindness, and wisdom, plant wholesome seeds in our own consciousness. These seeds will naturally ripen into experiences of peace, joy, and clarity. Unwholesome actions, born from intentions of greed, hatred, and delusion, plant unwholesome seeds. These seeds will just as surely ripen into experiences of anxiety, conflict, guilt, and suffering. Imagine a farmer, a wise farmer, practicing right action, diligently clears his field of rocks and thorns. He carefully chooses healthy, viable seeds and plants them in the well-prepared soil. He waters them, protects them from pests, and gives them sunlight. Inevitably, at the end of the season, he reaps a bountiful harvest of nourishing food. This harvest is not a reward. It is simply the natural result of his skillful actions. His neighbor, a foolish farmer, practices wrong action. He throws weed seeds onto rocky, unprepared ground and then walks away, ignoring them. At the end of the season, his field is full of thorns and bitter fruit. This is not a punishment. It is the natural consequence of his unskillful actions. We are all farmers in the field of our own lives. Our actions are the seeds we plant every single moment. The peace or anxiety we experience is the harvest we reap. This brings us to the profound psychological benefit of right action. A life lived with integrity is a life free from the heavy burden of remorse. When we know that we are doing our best not to cause harm, when we have nothing to hide, the mind can finally relax. There is no need for the constant, low-level anxiety that comes from fearing our misdeeds will be discovered. There is no gnawing guilt that keeps us awake at night. The Buddha called this the bliss of blamelessness. A mind that is calm and blameless is a mind that can become steady and concentrated. It is very difficult to find inner peace if you are constantly disturbing the world around you. You cannot expect the waters of your mind to become still and clear if you are always throwing the stones of unskillful actions into it. Right action creates the smooth, stable foundation upon which the deeper practices of meditation can be built. In essence, right action is the practice of living in alignment. It is the closing of the gap between the person we want to be and the person we are in our daily behaviors. It is about embodying our wisdom, walking our talk, and treating the world with the same compassion we wish for ourselves. It is the source of genuine self-respect and unshakable inner peace. Now, for most of us, in the modern world, the vast majority of our waking hours, our actions, and our ethical challenges are centered around one specific area of life: our work. How we earn our money and spend our days is a critical arena for practice. This recognition leads us directly to the third and final aspect of ethical conduct, the crucial practice of right livelihood. Having established a foundation of integrity through our speech and our general actions, we now arrive at the third and final pillar of ethical conduct, or sila. This is the practice of right livelihood, or samma ajiva. For most of us, our work is not just a small part of our lives. It is the activity that consumes the majority of our waking hours. It is the primary way we structure our days, interact with others, and contribute to the world. If this central pillar of our life is built on a foundation of harm, dishonesty, or greed, it will be a constant source of inner conflict and anxiety, no matter how much we may meditate or practice in our off hours. Right livelihood is the profound practice of integrating our spiritual values with our economic life, transforming our work from a potential source of stress into a meaningful expression of our path. The Buddha, in his practical wisdom, understood that certain professions are fundamentally incompatible with a path of harmlessness. He identified 5 specific types of commerce that a lay follower should avoid engaging in. These were dealing in weapons, which directly facilitate violence; dealing in human beings, which includes slavery and other forms of exploitation; dealing in meat, specifically the business of raising and slaughtering animals; dealing in intoxicants, which cloud the mind and lead to heedlessness; and dealing in poisons, which are intended to cause harm. This list is not an arbitrary set of rules, but a compassionate and logical guideline. The underlying principle is clear. If a line of work has as its primary aim the harming, exploitation, or delusion of other living beings, then participating in it will inevitably stain our own minds with the energies of violence and greed, making inner peace impossible. This ancient list can serve as a powerful ethical compass for us today. We can ask ourselves the modern equivalent of these questions. Does my work contribute to violence, whether physical, social, or environmental? Does it treat people as commodities to be exploited? Does it profit from the addiction or poor health of others? Does it thrive on spreading misinformation or confusion? Of course. We live in a globalized economy of breathtaking complexity. It can feel almost impossible to find a job that is perfectly pure and completely free from any harmful association. The person who writes code for a tech company may discover their software is used by the military. The farmer who grows organic vegetables may sell them to a supermarket chain with questionable labor practices. This complexity can be a source of anxiety in itself, a feeling that we are compromised no matter what we do. The key here, as always on this path, is to practice the middle way. The goal is not an unattainable perfection, but a conscious and skillful intention. The question is not, is my job perfect? but rather, what is the direction I am moving in? Am I consciously trying to choose work and to perform my work in a way that increases well-being and decreases harm in the world? It is about moving along a spectrum, away from harm and towards benefit, even in small ways. We can reflect on our work with honesty. Does it require me to be dishonest or to compromise my values? Does it leave me feeling drained and cynical at the end of the day? Or does it, in some way, allow me to be of service, to create something of value, to connect with others in a positive way? This honest self-inquiry is the beginning of bringing right livelihood into our lives. Beyond the nature of the work itself, there is a deeper, more transformative dimension to this practice. It concerns our inner attitude towards our work. You can take any profession, and people will have vastly different experiences of it. We can think of this in terms of 3 levels: the job, the career, and the calling. A person who has a job sees their work purely as a means to an end. The goal is the paycheck. The best part of the workday is 5 o'clock. The work itself is often endured rather than enjoyed. A person who has a career has a longer-term perspective. Their work is a vehicle for advancement, status, and personal achievement. The goal is the next promotion, the corner office, the recognition of their peers. This is often fueled by bhavatana, the craving to become something more, and while it can be motivating, it is often a source of immense stress, competition, and anxiety. A calling, however, is different. This is the experience of right livelihood as a true practice. A calling is when our work becomes an expression of our deepest values and a primary arena for our spiritual development. The focus is not on the future reward, but on the quality of presence, service, and integrity we bring to the present moment. The profound secret of the path is that any work, no matter how humble, can be transformed from a job into a calling through the power of our intention and our mindfulness. Consider the story of the mindful woodcutter. He works in a forest alongside many other men. The other woodcutters despise their work. They complain constantly about the blistering sun, the soreness in their muscles, the low pay, the demanding foreman. Their days are filled with misery and resentment. The mindful woodcutter, however, has a different experience. For him, the work is a meditation. When he walks into the forest, he feels gratitude for the shade of the trees. Before he cuts, he places a hand on the trunk, silently thanking the tree for the warmth it will provide. As he swings his axe, he coordinates the movement with his breath, feeling the power in his own body. He is aware of the texture of the bark, the smell of the fresh-cut wood, the sounds of the forest around him. He works with diligence and focus, but without inner conflict. At the end of the day, he is physically tired, but his mind is peaceful and clear. The external activity is identical for all the men, but for the mindful woodcutter, his livelihood is right because his relationship to it is grounded in mindfulness, respect, and gratitude. He has transformed his labor into a spiritual practice. This is a power that is available to all of us, right now. In whatever work we find ourselves doing, we can learn to see our workplace not as a battlefield of stress and competition, but as a monastery for daily life, a place filled with opportunities to practice. The annoying colleague who pushes our buttons becomes our greatest teacher in patience. The impossible deadline becomes our teacher in staying present and focused under pressure. The demanding client becomes our teacher in compassion and deep listening. We can practice mindfulness while walking to a meeting, feeling the sensation of our feet on the floor. We can take 3 mindful breaths before answering a stressful email. We can eat our lunch with our full attention, rather than scrolling through our phone. We can make a conscious effort to speak to our co-workers with kindness and to listen to their struggles with an open heart. When we do this, we are practicing right livelihood. We are infusing our work with the sanity and compassion of the path. Right livelihood, then, is the culminating practice of ethical conduct. It is where we bring our speech and our actions into alignment with our values in the area of life where it is often most challenging. It is about both what we do to earn a living and, more fundamentally, about the quality of mind we bring to that work. By choosing, where possible, work that is harmless, and by bringing mindfulness, integrity, and a spirit of service to whatever work we do, we transform a major source of potential anxiety into a powerful vehicle for our own liberation. We prove to ourselves that peace is not something we have to wait for until the weekend, or our vacation, or retirement. It is something we can cultivate right here, in the middle of our busy lives. With this, our exploration of Sila, the training in ethical conduct, is complete. We have laid a crucial foundation. By purifying our speech, our actions, and our livelihood, we create a life of outer harmony and integrity. This life, free from the inner turmoil of guilt and regret, produces a mind that is calm and settled. The outer world is no longer a constant source of agitation. Having established this baseline of outer peace, we are now perfectly prepared to turn our attention fully inward. We can now begin the deep and transformative work of training the mind itself. This is the realm of samadhi, or mental discipline, and it begins with the very engine that drives all progress on this path, the vital and continuous practice of right effort. Having laid the strong and peaceful foundation of ethical conduct, or sila, in our outer world, we are now ready to turn our full attention inward. We have quieted the external disturbances of our speech, actions, and livelihood, creating the ideal conditions for the deep, transformative work of training the mind itself. This is the domain of samadhi, or mental discipline, the very first factor in this inner training. The engine that powers our entire journey is called right effort, or samavayama. Now, the word effort can be a heavy one for us. In our modern culture, it is often associated with struggle, with stressful, white-knuckled striving, with the hustle and grind mentality that often leads to burnout and anxiety. But the effort spoken of here is of a completely different quality. It is not the effort of a drill sergeant screaming at us to push harder. It is the wise, joyful, and gentle persistence of a gardener tending to their beloved garden. It is the skillful application of energy, guided by wisdom and suffused with kindness. Imagine your mind is a garden. This garden has the potential to grow the most beautiful flowers of loving kindness, joy, and tranquility. It can produce a nourishing harvest of wisdom, clarity, and compassion. But like any garden, it is also susceptible to weeds. The seeds of anxiety, anger, greed, and despair are always blowing in on the winds of life. If we do nothing, if we practice no effort, the garden will quickly become overgrown with these weeds, choking out the light and preventing anything beautiful from growing. This is the path of neglect. On the other hand, if we become enraged by the weeds and attack the garden with a flamethrower of self-aggression and hatred, we will destroy everything, the weeds and the flowers alike, leaving only a scorched and barren patch of earth. This is the path of wrong, violent effort. Right effort is the middle way of the gardener. The gardener understands that cultivation is a gentle, continuous process. They do not expect the garden to be perfect overnight. They simply show up every day with patience and care and skillfully tend to what is needed. This art of mental gardening can be understood through the framework of the 4 great efforts. This is the Buddha's comprehensive guide to skillfully working with our own minds. The first of these is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. A wise gardener doesn't just wait for weeds to appear. They put up a fence to stop new seeds from blowing in. In our practice, this is known as guarding the sense doors. It is the skillful effort of noticing what we allow into our minds through our eyes, ears, and thoughts. If we know that scrolling through a particular social media feed always leaves us feeling anxious and inadequate, right effort is the gentle choice to unfollow that account. If we know that watching hours of sensationalized news agitates our mind, right effort is the choice to stay informed in a more balanced way. This is not about hiding from the world. It is the wise self-care of not needlessly exposing our mental garden to sources of contamination. The second great effort is to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts, weeds will still sprout. A flash of anger, a surge of jealousy, a familiar spiral of anxious thoughts. These will happen. The practice here is not to panic or to fall into self-blame. The gardener does not curse the weed. They simply recognize it for what it is, and gently but firmly they pull it out. When you notice an anxious thought taking root, you can acknowledge it by softly labeling it in your mind. Ah, this is worrying. This simple act of naming creates a space of mindfulness around the thought, loosening its grip. You can then gently redirect your attention to an anchor, like the physical sensation of your breath. You are not violently suppressing the thought. You are simply withdrawing your attention from it, cutting off its source of nourishment. The weed, without the sunlight of your obsessive focus, will wither. The third great effort reminds us that gardening is not just about weeding. It is the effort to arouse wholesome states that have not yet arisen. The wise gardener actively plants the seeds of flowers and vegetables. In the same way, we can consciously introduce wholesome qualities into our minds. If you are feeling down, you can make the effort to listen to a piece of music that you know uplifts your spirit. You can read a page from an inspiring book. You can bring to mind a memory of a time you felt deep gratitude and allow that feeling to permeate your being. You can actively practice loving-kindness meditation, consciously planting the seeds of goodwill in your heart. This is not about pretending you don't feel bad. It is about skillfully introducing an antidote, bringing a different, more beautiful quality into the garden of the mind. The fourth and final great effort is to maintain and develop the wholesome states that are already present. When a beautiful flower finally blooms in our gardenia moment of genuine peace, a spontaneous feeling of compassion, a flash of insight, we must cherish it. A good gardener doesn't just ignore a newly bloomed flower, they water it, make sure it has enough sun, and protect it. When you experience a moment of calm, right effort is the practice of savoring it. Really feel what that peace feels like in your body. When you perform a small act of kindness, take a moment later to reflect on it, allowing the wholesome feeling of generosity to resonate within you. By consciously paying attention to and appreciating these positive states, we strengthen their neural pathways in our brain. We are watering the flowers, encouraging them to grow stronger and bloom more frequently. It is the quality of rightness in right effort that makes it so transformative. It is the same balanced, not too tight, not too loose quality of the lute string. Wrong effort is tense, impatient, and filled with aversion. It is the voice of the inner drill sergeant. You must get rid of this anxiety. You have to be more peaceful. Try harder. This kind of effort only creates more tension. It is like trying to smooth out ripples in a pond by slapping the water. Right effort, on the other hand, is patient, relaxed, and suffused with kindness. It is the energy of encouragement, not of demand. It approaches the mind with curiosity, not with judgment. It is the gentle but unwavering intention to simply nudge the mind again and again in a wholesome direction. This is where we must strike a delicate balance between effort and acceptance. What happens when we fail? What happens when a weed of anger grows into a giant thorny bush and we spend a whole afternoon lost in its thorns? The inner critic will pounce, telling us we have failed at right effort, that we are no good at this. If we listen to that voice, the practice itself becomes another source of suffering. This is where the effort of acceptance and self-compassion is paramount. The practice is not about having a perfectly weed-free garden. That is impossible. The practice is about the process of tending the garden. The most important effort is the compassionate effort to notice we have been lost, and then, without blame, to gently begin again. It is the willingness to forgive ourselves for our imperfections and to return to the path with a soft and open heart. The real measure of our practice is not how long we can stay focused, but how quickly and kindly we return when we have wandered. Right effort, then, is the wise and compassionate heart of our inner practice. It is the joyful energy that we bring to the cultivation of our own minds. It is the understanding that liberation is not a matter of luck, but a matter of skill. The skill of knowing what to cultivate and what to release, and doing so with a gentle and tireless patience. It is the engine that moves us along the path from confusion to clarity. But in order to be a skillful gardener, you must first be able to see your garden. You must be able to recognize a weed from a flower at the moment it sprouts. You must be able to feel the quality of the soil and know when it needs water. This intimate, moment-to-moment knowledge of our own inner landscape requires a very specific and powerful tool. It requires the capacity to be fully present with our experience as it unfolds. This essential skill, the very heart of mental training, is the next factor of the path, the profound and life-changing practice of right mindfulness. With the joyful and gentle energy of right effort, we have learned to become skillful gardeners of our minds, encouraging the flowers of wholesome states and pulling the weeds of unwholesome ones. But to be a truly effective gardener, you need one indispensable tool: light. You need to be able to see the garden clearly, to distinguish a new sprout of kindness from a new sprout of anxiety. This illuminating light, this capacity to see our own inner and outer world with clarity in the present moment, is the practice of right mindfulness, or samma sati. This is the seventh factor of the path, and it lies at the very heart of the training in mental discipline. It is, without exaggeration, the single most powerful antidote to the anxious, scattered state of the monkey mind. While the monkey mind lives in the past, lost in regret, or in the future, lost in worry, mindfulness gently and firmly brings us back home, to the only place where life is actually happening, right here, right now. To put it simply, mindfulness is the art of knowing what you are doing while you are doing it. It is paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. This last part, without judgment, is crucial. Mindfulness is not about analyzing or criticizing our experience. It is about meeting it with a bare, open, and kind awareness. It is the difference between being lost in a storm of angry thoughts and being able to stand back and say, with a calm clarity, the mind is experiencing anger right now. In that simple shift of perspective, from being the storm to being the witness of the storm, lies the beginning of all freedom. In our unmindful state, we live our lives on autopilot, driven by unconscious habits and reactions. Mindfulness is the act of waking up from this trance and becoming an active participant in our own existence. The classical teachings provide a comprehensive and brilliant map for cultivating this awareness, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. These are 4 interconnected fields of our experience where we can apply our attention. The first, and the most essential starting point, is mindfulness of the body, or kayanupassana. The body is our greatest ally in this practice because, unlike our thoughts, it is always in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past or feel your feet on the floor in the future. The body is our anchor to the now. We can practice by bringing our attention to the simple, physical sensation of the breath entering and leaving the body. We don't try to control it, we just feel it. The subtle rise and fall of the abdomen, the coolness of the air at the nostrils. When the mind wanders, as it will, we gently and kindly guide it back to the anchor of the breath. We can also be mindful of the body's posture, noticing the feeling of sitting, of standing, of lying down. This practice pulls our energy out of the frantic world of anxious thinking and grounds it in the solid, calming reality of our physical existence. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or Vedananupassana. This refers to the raw, immediate tone of any experience, which can be categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Before a feeling becomes a complex emotion with a story attached, I am so anxious about that meeting. It first arises as a simple, raw sensation in the body, a tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, a tingling in the hands. Mindfulness of feelings is the practice of noticing these raw sensations as they arise, without immediately launching into the second arrow of reaction. We can simply note unpleasant feeling or pleasant feeling. By meeting our experience at this fundamental level, we can observe our feelings without being hijacked by them. We see that they are just impersonal, fleeting sensations, not solid commands that we must obey. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, or Cittanupassana. This is the practice of observing the overall state or quality of our consciousness from moment to moment. We learn to recognize, without judgment, the mind is agitated, or the mind is calm. We notice when the mind is gripped by desire, or free from desire, when it is clouded by anger, or filled with kindness, when it is scattered, or when it is focused. This is like a meteorologist observing the weather. The meteorologist doesn't get angry at the clouds or try to fight the rain. They simply note, it is raining. In the same way, we learn to note, the mind is experiencing anxiety. This simple act of recognition prevents us from identifying with the state. The anxiety is a temporary weather pattern passing through the vast sky of our mind. It is not the sky itself. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, a complex term that can be simplified here as mindfulness of the contents and patterns of our mind. This is where we begin to see with our own eyes how the whole process of suffering works. We notice a specific sensory input, say, hearing a critical tone in someone's voice. We then mindfully watch how that trigger gives rise to an unwholesome thought, which in turn fuels an unpleasant feeling, which then creates the urge to speak or act in a reactive way. We see the chain reaction of the second arrow as it happens. By observing this process clearly, we begin to understand it. And when we understand it, we are no longer a helpless victim of it. We can choose to step out of the chain. This is how mindfulness directly cultivates wisdom. There is a wonderful image that captures the essence of mindfulness in action, that of a tightrope walker. A great acrobat is walking a thin wire suspended high above a canyon. The crowd watches, gasping. Later, someone asks him, What is your secret? How do you face such mortal danger without falling? The acrobat answers, "My secret is very simple. When my right foot is on the rope, my entire universe is my right foot. When my left foot is on the rope, my entire universe is my left foot. I do not allow my mind to look down into the chasm of what I fear might happen. I do not look back to the safety of the platform I have left behind. I am concerned only with the reality of this single step. The chasm below is our past and our future, filled with all our regrets and anxieties. The rope is the present moment. Mindfulness is the art of keeping our attention here, on the simple reality of this one breath, this one step, this one sensation. This is where our balance, our safety, and our peace are found. The transformative power of mindfulness lies in its ability to create a pause. In our ordinary, unmindful lives, we are caught in a stimulus-response loop. A trigger occurs, a stressful email arrives. This immediately sparks an automatic thought. This is bad news. This thought creates an unpleasant feeling, a jolt of adrenaline. And that feeling drives a reactive behavior. We anxiously tear open the email, our body already in fight or flight mode. It all happens in a split second, and we feel we have no control. Mindfulness inserts a sacred pause into this chain reaction. The trigger occurs, the stressful email arrives. But now, because we are mindful, we can pause. In that pause, we notice the automatic thought arising. We notice the jolt of adrenaline in the body. We see the urge to react. And because we see it, we are no longer compelled by it. In that space, we are free. We can take a conscious breath. We can relax our shoulders. We can choose to open the email with a calm and centered mind. This pause is the space where our wisdom can operate. It is the gap between stimulus and response, where all our power and freedom reside. This profound practice is not something reserved for the meditation cushion. The ultimate goal is to weave mindfulness into the fabric of every moment. You can begin right now. The next time you drink a cup of tea, for the first few sips, practice mindful drinking. Feel the warmth of the cup. See the color of the tea. Smell the aroma. Taste the flavor. The next time you wash your hands, just wash your hands. Feel the temperature of the water, the texture of the soap, the sensation of your hands rubbing together. The next time you walk from one room to another, practice mindful walking. Feel the contact of your feet on the ground. Mindfulness is not about adding another task to your to-do list. It is about bringing a new quality of being to the tasks you are already doing. It is the simple, repeated, and revolutionary act of bringing your mind back home to your life. Right mindfulness is the light, the anchor, and the space of freedom on our path. It illuminates the inner workings of our mind so we can apply right effort skillfully. It anchors us in the present moment, keeping us safe from the tempests of past and future. It creates the precious, liberating space in which we can break free from our anxious habits and make wise, compassionate choices. As we continue to practice this art of returning our attention again and again to the present, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind, like a muscle being trained, becomes stronger, steadier, and less easily distracted. This emerging quality of unwavering stability, born directly from the patient practice of mindfulness, is the gateway to the eighth and final factor of the path. It is the deeply peaceful and powerful state of right concentration. As we patiently and persistently practice right mindfulness, bringing our wandering attention back home to the present moment, again and again, a beautiful and natural transformation begins to occur. The mind, which was once like a restless butterfly flitting from flower to flower, begins to settle. The muscle of our attention grows stronger. The ability to not just return to an object of attention, but to rest there, to remain, begins to develop. This emerging quality of calm, unwavering stability, is the eighth and final factor of the path. It is called right concentration, or samadhi. This is the culmination of the training in mental discipline, the fruit of all our efforts. If mindfulness is the act of gently holding a lantern to see what is in the room of the present moment, concentration is the act of placing that lantern on a steady table, allowing its light to grow bright, stable, and unwavering, illuminating everything with a serene and powerful clarity. It is helpful to distinguish between mindfulness and concentration, as they are two wings of the same bird. Right mindfulness is the broader faculty of awareness. It is like a wide-beam flashlight sweeping across the landscape of our experience, noticing sights, sounds, sensations, and thoughts as they arise and pass away. Its quality is open, receptive, and inclusive. Right concentration, on the other hand, is the ability to narrow that beam of light into a single, powerful, and focused laser. It is the deliberate act of collecting all of our scattered mental energy and unifying it upon a single object, such as the sensation of the breath. These two qualities work together in a beautiful synergy. When we are trying to concentrate on the breath, it is mindfulness that notices when the laser beam of our attention has drifted off to a thought or a sound. It is right effort that then gently brings the attention back. And as we repeat this process thousands of times, our ability to remain on the object, our right concentration, becomes stronger and more effortless. The state of a concentrated mind is often compared to a deep, clear mountain lake. In its ordinary, agitated state, our mind is like that lake on a windy day. The surface is choppy, stirred up by the winds of desire, aversion, and worry. The water is murky, filled with the swirling sediment of our unwholesome thoughts. In this state, the water is turbulent and opaque. You cannot see into its depths, nor can it provide a clear reflection of the sky above. This is the mind of anxiety and distraction. The practice of concentration is the process of allowing the wind to die down. As we rest our attention on a single calm object like the breath, the waves of discursive thought begin to settle. The mud and sediment of our mental afflictions, the greed, the hatred, the restlessness are no longer being stirred up, and they slowly begin to sink to the bottom. Gradually, the surface of the lake becomes perfectly still, smooth as glass, and the water becomes crystal clear. This is the mind in a state of samadhi. When the mind reaches this state of profound stillness, two remarkable things happen. First, it experiences a quality of rest and rejuvenation that is far deeper and more healing than even a good night's sleep. The constant background noise of the monkey mind, the endless inner chatter that drains so much of our energy, finally ceases. The mind is not asleep. It is acutely awake and alert, but it is utterly at peace. It is unburdened. This is why concentration is a powerful medicine for mental fatigue, burnout, and the kind of anxiety that comes from an overactive mind. The second thing that happens is that the perfectly still surface of the lake can now reflect the sky and the surrounding mountains with absolute photographic precision. A mind that is calm, unified, and concentrated becomes a perfect instrument for seeing reality as it truly is. It gains the power to penetrate the surface of things, and to see directly into their nature. This is how concentration becomes the direct foundation for liberating wisdom. As this practice deepens, the mind can enter into states of profound pleasure and peace, known as the jhanas, or meditative absorptions. It is not necessary to become an expert in these states, but it is inspiring to know that our own minds possess this incredible, innate capacity for a happiness that is completely independent of the outside world. In the first of these states, as the mind fully lets go of its attachment to sense desires and unwholesome thoughts, a powerful feeling of bliss and rapture arises. This is not a worldly excitement, but a deep, all-pervading joy and contentment that is born of seclusion and stillness. It is a powerful proof that we do not need to constantly seek pleasure from external sources. We have a wellspring of profound well-being right inside of us, accessible through the training of our own attention. To taste even a moment of this state is to loosen the grip of tanha, the thirst for things, as we realize we have something far more satisfying available within. But this practice is not just for advanced meditators seeking blissful states. It is a profoundly practical tool for dealing with the very real problems of anxiety and sleeplessness. The nervous system of an anxious person is often stuck in the on position, dominated by the sympathetic nervous system's fight or flight response. The simple act of focusing on the breath, especially the long, slow exhale, directly activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural rest and digest, or calm and connect mode. It is a direct physiological antidote to the stress response. You can use this as a medicine at the end of the day. When you lie down to sleep, instead of allowing the monkey mind to replay the day's worries and rehearse tomorrow's anxieties, you can make the gentle choice to practice. Bring your attention out of your head and into your body. Rest your awareness on the gentle rising and falling of your abdomen as you breathe. You don't need to strain or force anything. Simply rest. When thoughts inevitably arise, see them as clouds floating by in the sky of your mind, and gently, without self-criticism, guide your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. This simple practice does two things. First, by calming the nervous system, it makes the body more receptive to sleep. Second, and more importantly, it trains the mind not to be hijacked by anxious thoughts. You are practicing letting go. Even if sleep does not come immediately, the mind and body are resting in a deep and profound way, which is a powerful form of healing in itself. You are no longer at war with your own mind in the darkness. You are learning to be at peace. Right concentration is the practice of gathering our scattered mental energies into a single, unified, and powerful force. It is the culmination of the training in samadhi, bringing our inner world to a state of profound stillness, clarity, and peace. With this factor, our tour of the active training of the Eightfold Path is complete. Through the practice of ethical conduct, or sila, we have harmonized our outer life. Through the practice of mental discipline, or samadhi, we have unified our inner life. Our mind has now become a truly remarkable instrument. Through mindfulness, it is aware and perceptive. Through concentration, it is steady, stable, and powerful. It is like a telescope that has been perfectly built, finely calibrated, and placed on a solid, unshakable foundation. The question now becomes, where do we point it? We do not stop here, merely enjoying the peace. We use this powerful tool for its ultimate purpose, to see with a clarity that liberates. We turn this sharp and steady lens of the mind towards the investigation of the ultimate nature of reality itself, to see the truths that cut the roots of suffering forever. This is the deepest dimension of wisdom, prajna, and the first and most fundamental truth we examine with this newfound clarity is the universal characteristic of all existence, the profound reality of impermanence. We have now traveled far on our inner journey. Through the practice of ethical conduct, or sila, we have brought a harmony and integrity to our outer lives. Through the practice of mental discipline, or samadhi, we have cultivated a mind that is calm, focused, and beautifully stable. Our mind is no longer a turbulent, muddy pond, but a still, clear lake. We have arrived at the threshold of profound, liberating wisdom, or prajna. It is time to use this remarkable instrument we have so patiently forged. It is time to point the clear, steady lens of our concentrated awareness at the nature of reality itself, to see things not as we assume them to be, but as they truly are. The first and most fundamental truth we investigate, the characteristic that defines every aspect of our existence, is the truth of impermanence, or anicca. Impermanence is not a hidden or esoteric doctrine. It is the most obvious, yet most consistently ignored, fact of life. Everything changes. Nothing lasts. Look around you. The device you are listening on was once raw materials in the earth, and will one day be dust. The building you are in is slowly decaying. The weather outside is in constant flux. Within your own body, cells are dying and being born in the trillions. Your breath is flowing in and out. Your thoughts, your moods, your emotions are a ceaseless, flowing river. This is not a philosophy to be believed. It is a reality to be observed. The sky is blue. Water is wet, and everything changes. Yet, despite its undeniable reality, we live our lives in a state of profound denial of this truth. We build our entire emotional world on the false and unspoken assumption that things will last. We expect our youth and health to be permanent, our happy relationships to never change, our moments of success to bring us lasting satisfaction, and our loved ones to be with us forever. This denial puts us in a constant, exhausting, and unwinnable war with the fundamental nature of the universe. This war is the source of so much of our anxiety. Anxiety is, at its core, the fear of change. We fear losing our job, our health, our partner, our security. We spend our lives trying to nail everything down, to create a sense of permanent safety in a world whose very essence is flow. Depression and grief are often the flip side of the same coin, the pain of a change that has already happened. We are heartbroken over what we have lost because we were attached to it as if it were permanent. We are constantly shooting ourselves with the second arrow, not because life is difficult, but because we are shocked and offended when it behaves exactly as it always does, by changing. To see and accept the truth of anicca is to declare a truce in this painful, pointless war. It is to finally align ourselves with reality, and in that alignment, to find a profound and unshakable peace. To make this understanding personal and visceral, we can practice observing impermanence in the three arenas of our own direct experience. First, we can turn our awareness to the impermanence of the body. From the moment of our birth, our body is an ever-changing process. We can notice the constant rhythm of the breath, the beating of the heart, the subtle shifts in posture. We can observe how a cut on our finger heals and changes day by day, or how our hair and nails grow. We can see the larger arc of aging reflected in the mirror. Our culture teaches us to fight this process, to view aging as a failure. But from the perspective of wisdom, it is simply nature unfolding. By bringing a kind, non-judgmental awareness to the changing nature of our own bodies, we can begin to let go of our attachment to a particular image of health or youth, and instead cultivate a sense of gratitude and care for this precious temporary vessel. Next, we can observe the impermanence of our feelings and sensations. This is a crucial practice for anyone who struggles with anxiety or other difficult emotions. No feeling is final. Happiness, sadness, anger, fear, peace, boredom, they are all temporary visitors in the guest house of our mind. They come, they stay for a while, and if we don't cling to them or fight them, they leave. When you feel a wave of anxiety, you can meet it with this wisdom. Instead of panicking and thinking, "This is me, this will last forever," you can observe it as a mindful scientist. Here is the sensation of anxiety. There is a tightness in the chest, a quickening of the breath. It is unpleasant. Let me watch it and see what it does. If you can watch it with this detached curiosity, you will see for yourself that it is not a solid entity. It is a flickering, changing energy that will, in its own time, transform into something else. The pain of this practice is that our moments of joy and pleasure are also impermanent. We cannot hold on to them, but the freedom is that our moments of pain and sorrow are equally fleeting. Finally, we can observe the impermanence of our thoughts and mental states. Our thoughts are the most ephemeral, fast-moving phenomena of all. The mind is a waterfall of ideas, images, plans, memories, and judgments, constantly cascading. When we are not mindful, we are swept away by this torrent, believing every thought to be true and important. But with the clarity of a trained mind, we can sit on the bank of the river and simply watch the thoughts flow by. An anxious thought arises, a happy memory follows, a plan for dinner appears, a line from a song pops up. They are all just momentary mental events. By seeing their fleeting, insubstantial nature, we learn not to take them so seriously. An anxious thought is not a command from the universe. It is just a thought, a fleeting cloud in the sky of the mind. Seeing life through the lens of impermanence is not a depressing perspective. It is, in fact, the greatest source of hope. If things were permanent, no change would be possible. If you were sick, you would be sick forever. If you were unhappy, you would be unhappy forever. If the world were unjust, it would be unjust forever. It is the very fact that things change that makes growth, healing, and liberation possible. Every moment is a new moment. The past is gone, and the future has not yet arrived. The only reality is this present moment, which is fresh, new, and full of possibility. The truth of impermanence frees us from the prison of the past and gives us the courage to face the future with an open heart. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates the wise way to live in harmony with impermanence. Imagine a person on a beach, building a magnificent sandcastle. This person is an adult, and he is obsessed with his creation. He is filled with anxiety, constantly trying to make it perfect, to protect it from the wind, to shore up its walls against the encroaching tide. He shouts at children who run too close. He cannot enjoy the sun or the sound of the waves, because all of his energy is consumed by the desperate, stressful effort of trying to make something temporary into something permanent. His experience is one of torment. Now, imagine a little girl on the same beach. She too is building a sandcastle. She is completely absorbed in her work, laughing with delight as she adds a tower or a moat. She builds with love and total attention, but with no illusion of permanence. She knows the tide will come. When the first small wave licks at the edge of her castle, She doesn't scream in anger. She might even greet it with a squeal of excitement. When the waves finally wash her creation away, she is not devastated. Her joy was in the process of creating, not in the possession of the object. When the castle is gone, she might turn her attention to the beautiful patterns the water has left on the wet sand, fully engaged in the next new reality. She is learning to surf the waves of life, not to stand against them, like a rock being battered into submission. The adult is at war with reality. The child is dancing with it. The wisdom of Anika teaches us how to live with the joyful, creative spirit of the child. To embrace impermanence is to soften our grip on life. It is to learn to love people and things fully, in the present moment, without the anxious demand that they stay the same forever. It allows us to experience grief without being destroyed by it, and to experience joy without desperately clinging to it. It is the end of our struggle and the beginning of our peace. As we rest in this profound understanding, seeing the constant, selfless flow of our own body, feelings, and thoughts, a critical question begins to form in the quiet of our concentrated mind. If everything I identify as me is just a constantly changing process, if my body is not the same from one moment to the next, if my feelings and thoughts are as fleeting as clouds, then where is the permanent, unchanging I at the center of it all? Who is the one who is doing the experiencing? This deep, personal investigation into the nature of the self, born directly from the wisdom of impermanence, leads us to the very heart of the Buddha's liberating insight, the truth of not, self, or anatta. As we stand in the clear, quiet space created by our practice, we turn the powerful lens of our mindful awareness to look at the world and ourselves. We have seen, with undeniable clarity, the truth of impermanence, Anicath fact that everything is in a constant state of flux. This profound insight naturally gives rise to the most personal and penetrating question of all. If my body is changing with every breath, if my feelings are a flowing river, and if my thoughts are as fleeting as clouds in the sky, then who am I? Where is the solid, continuous, unchanging I at the center of all this change? It is here that we encounter the Buddha's most unique, most challenging, and most liberating teaching. It is the truth of not self, or anatta. At first, this idea can be deeply unsettling. Our entire life, our entire culture, is built upon the assumption of a solid, separate self. We think of ourselves as a fixed entity, a thinker behind the thoughts, a feeler behind the feelings, a protagonist in the story of our life. The teaching of anatta does not seek to deny our existence, but it asks us to investigate the nature of that existence more deeply. It suggests that our feeling of being a solid, separate self is a case of mistaken identity, an illusion, and that this very illusion is the deepest root of our anxiety. To see through this illusion is to pull the taproot of our suffering. To understand this, let us turn to a famous dialogue that took place over 2,000 years ago between a Buddhist sage named Nagasena and a powerful Greco-Bactrian king named Milinda. The king, a sharp and logical thinker, asked the sage for his name. "I am known as Nagasena, Your Majesty," the sage replied. "But this is only a convenient designation, a name. There is no permanent person to be found here." The king was intrigued and challenged him. Pointing to a nearby chariot, he asked, "Reverend Sir, is the chariot the pole?" "No, Your Majesty," said Nagasena. "Is it the axle, the wheels, the frame, the ropes?" To each question, Nagasena answered no. Then the king pressed, "Is the chariot all of these parts combined?" "No, Your Majesty." Is it something entirely separate from these parts? No, Your Majesty. The king, exasperated, declared, "Then you are lying. There is no chariot." Nagasena remained calm and asked the king, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here? On foot or in a vehicle?" "In a chariot," the king admitted. The sage then smiled and explained, "Chariot," he said, "is simply a name, a convention we use when the pole, the axle, the wheels, and the frame are all assembled and functioning together. But if you break it down and search for the essential chariotness, you will not find it. It is a concept we apply to a collection of interdependent parts." Then, Nagasena delivered the final, brilliant point. He said, "Just as chariot is a conventional name for a collection of parts, so Nagasena, or me, or I, is a conventional name for a collection of physical and mental processes. But if you search for a permanent, unchanging self that owns these processes, you will not find one. What we call our self is an assembly of 5 constantly changing processes, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. The first is form. Our physical body, which we have already seen, is impermanent. The second is feeling, the raw sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, which arise and pass away in every moment. The third is perception, the faculty that recognizes and labels our experience. That is a tree. This is a sad feeling. That is a loud sound. The fourth is mental formations. This is a vast category that includes all our habits, memories, opinions, moods, and impulses, the chattering of the monkey mind. And the fifth is consciousness, the raw, flickering awareness that arises when our senses meet the world. There is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness. It is not a single, monolithic entity, but a moment-to-moment process of knowing. The Buddha's insight was this: if you look deeply into each of these 5 processes, you cannot find a self there. The body is not you. Your feelings are not you. Your thoughts are not you. And there is no you standing behind them, orchestrating everything like a master puppeteer. The sense of I is an emergent property, a story that the mind creates from the rapid interplay of these 5 fleeting processes, just as the moving frames of a film create the illusion of a continuous story. This may sound like abstract philosophy, but it is the key to understanding the very mechanics of our anxiety. Think about the language of your own anxious mind. What is going to happen to me? What if I fail? Why don't they like me? My anxiety is overwhelming. All of this suffering is predicated on the existence of a solid, vulnerable me that needs to be protected, defended, and worried about. This me is the central character in a non-stop drama, the fragile hero who is constantly under threat. We spend our lives polishing this me, promoting it, and trying to shield it from harm. This attachment to a fictional self is the source of all our insecurity, our vanity, our jealousy, and our fear. To see through this illusion is the most profound liberation. Again, it must be stressed. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It means you do not exist as a separate, isolated thing. You exist as a flowing, interconnected process. You are a verb, not a noun. You are more like a river than a statue. This is the best news imaginable. If you were a fixed, solid self, you could never truly change or grow. You would be trapped forever with your current flaws and limitations. But because you are a dynamic process, change is your fundamental nature. Healing, growth, and wisdom are always possible when we begin to loosen our identification with this small, anxious self. The entire experience of suffering changes. An anxious thought may still arise in the mind, but instead of clutching it and saying, "Oh no, I am so anxious," we can learn to observe it with a bit of distance. There is the thought of anxiety arising in this mind-body process. The thought itself might be the same, but the second arrow of personal identification is gone. Criticism from another person may still be unpleasant, but instead of it being a devastating blow to the core of me, it can be seen for what it is. Unpleasant sounds and ideas are being received by this consciousness. The sting is still there, but the poison of personal failure is not. We de-personalize our suffering. We take the me and mine out of it, and without a self to cling to it, suffering loses its sticky, toxic quality. The burden becomes infinitely lighter. It is the difference between being caught in the middle of a raging fire and watching the fire from a safe and peaceful distance. The realization of not self is the ultimate letting go. It is the final surrender of our exhausting, lifelong project of trying to build and defend a separate self. It is the discovery that what we truly are is not this small, fragile, anxious ego, but something far more vast, open, and mysterious. We are not the character in the story. We are the awareness in which the entire story of life unfolds. When we truly begin to see through the illusion of the separate self, the hard, artificial boundary we have drawn between me and the rest of the world begins to soften and dissolve. We see that my breath is not mine. It is the air of the entire atmosphere. My body is not mine. It is composed of the food and water of the earth. My thoughts are not mine. They are shaped by my family, my culture, and all of human history. We see that we are not an isolated island, but a wave in a vast and interconnected ocean. This direct seeing of our profound interwovenness with all of life is the next great vista on our journey into wisdom. It is the life-altering truth of interdependence. As we rest in the profound insight of not self, or anatta, the solid, seemingly permanent walls of our separate self begin to dissolve. The illusion that we are an isolated, independent entity, a lonely hero fighting against the world, reveals itself to be just an illusion. And as these walls melt away, a new and breathtaking vista opens up before us. If we are not a separate self, then what are we? The answer to this question is the positive expression of not self, the other side of the same coin of wisdom. It is the teaching on interdependence, or paticcasamuppada, which literally means dependent origination. It is the simple but life-altering realization that nothing, absolutely nothing, exists on its own. Everything arises in dependence on other things. We are not nouns, but verbs, seamlessly interwoven with the entire cosmos. The Buddha expressed this fundamental law with an elegant simplicity. When this is, that is. From the arising of this, that arises. When this is not, that is not. From the ceasing of this, that ceases. This is not a mystical riddle. It is a precise description of reality. Consider a single sheet of paper in your hand. Where is it from? You might say, it is from a factory. But the factory could not exist without the workers, and the workers could not exist without the food they ate, which came from farmers who depended on the sun, the rain, and the earth. The paper itself is made from wood pulp, which came from a tree. The tree could not exist without the soil, the air, the sunlight, the rain. So, in this single sheet of paper are the clouds, the sun, the earth, the logger's labor, and the factory worker's lunch. If you were to remove the sun, the paper could not exist. If you were to remove the clouds, the paper could not exist. In this way, the paper is made up entirely of non-paper elements. It has no separate, independent existence. Now, look at your own hand holding the paper. That hand, this body, this mind, is exactly the same. You are here because of your parents and their parents, stretching back through an unbroken chain of life. You are here because of the food you ate this morning, connecting you to the farmer, the truck driver, the grocer, the sun, the rain, the soil. The language you are thinking in right now was not invented by you. It was gifted to you by your culture. You are made entirely of non-you elements. To see this is to see the truth of interdependence. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, there is a beautiful and potent image that helps us grasp this profound reality. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single knot, every intersection in this limitless net hangs a single, brilliant, multifaceted jewel. Each jewel is perfectly clear and reflects all the other jewels in the net. Not just the jewels next to it, but every single jewel, all the way to the farthest reaches of infinity. And every reflection in that one jewel also contains the reflections of all the other jewels, and so on, ad infinitum. Each of us is one of these jewels. Our existence is made up of the reflections of everything else. Our every facet reflects the whole of the cosmos, and the whole of the cosmos reflects us. When one jewel is touched, it trembles, and that trembling is transmitted through the entire net, causing every other jewel to tremble in response. When one jewel is polished and shines more brightly, its brilliance is reflected in every other jewel, and the entire net becomes more luminous. This is the vision of reality that interdependence reveals. We are not isolated gems locked in a box. We are inextricably interconnected nodes in a single, shimmering web of existence. This understanding is not just a beautiful piece of poetry. It is a direct and powerful medicine for one of the greatest sources of suffering in our modern world, the feeling of loneliness. Our society often promotes a story of radical individualism, the myth of the self-made person who pulls themselves up by their own bootstraps. This story, while seeming to celebrate strength, can create a deep-seated sense of isolation, a feeling that we are fundamentally alone in our struggles, that we must face the world as a solitary unit. The wisdom of interdependence shows us that this feeling of being separate is a perceptual error. It is, in fact, impossible to be separate. The air entering your lungs right now was, just a moment ago, the air inside a tree. The carbon dioxide you exhale will become part of the body of a plant. We are constantly exchanging our very substance with the world around us. In this light, how can we feel truly alone? You are not just in the universe is in you. To feel this truth in your bones is to understand that you belong here. You are a legitimate and necessary part of the whole, as essential as the sun and the stars. The feeling of loneliness begins to dissolve in the warmth of this profound belonging. When we see the world through the lens of Indra's net, our understanding of ethics and responsibility is also transformed. It is no longer a matter of following external rules to be a good person. It becomes a natural and logical expression of wisdom. If every jewel reflects every other jewel, then any action I take, any word I speak, any thought I harbor is not a private event. It is a vibration that ripples out and affects the entire net. An act of kindness is never small. It polishes not only our own jewel, but sends shimmering reflections of light and hope to countless others in ways we may never know. A harsh word or a selfish act sends out its own dark ripples, subtly dimming the light of the whole. We realize that the sharp distinction between self-interest and other interest is an illusion, because our well-being is intrinsically linked to the well-being of all. Acting for the benefit of the whole is the most intelligent form of self-interest. This is the ultimate foundation for compassion. In our old, separate view of the world, the suffering of another person was their problem. We might feel a detached pity, but it was happening over there, to them. From the perspective of interdependence, the suffering of another is reflected in our own jewel. We feel it. Their pain is not separate from our own experience. When we see a fellow human being struggling with anxiety, we recognize that the same causes and conditions that lead to their suffering also exist within us. The line between self and other blurs and softens. It is this direct, visceral recognition of our shared existence that gives birth to true compassion. It is not a feeling of superiority or pity. It is a feeling of kinship, of solidarity. It is the heart's natural response to seeing a part of itself in pain. The wisdom of interdependence is the grand, unifying vision that emerges from the deconstruction of the separate self. It takes the insight of anatta and shows us its beautiful and positive implication. We are not nothing, we are everything. We are a unique and precious expression of the entire universe, and the entire universe expresses itself through us. We are waves in a single ocean, leaves on a single tree. To live with this understanding is to move through the world with a sense of awe, reverence, and profound connection. It is the end of alienation and the beginning of true communion. As we learn to see the world as this interconnected web of being, as we see the joys and sorrows of others reflected in our own heart, a powerful and spontaneous energy begins to arise. It is the heartfelt, active wish to help alleviate the suffering we now see is not separate from us. This tender, responsive, and courageous movement of the heart has a name. It is the great practice of compassion, or karuna. As the truth of our profound interdependence begins to dawn in our awareness, as we see ourselves reflected in the jewel of every other being in Indra's vast net, an unavoidable perception arises. This interconnected web of life is vibrating with suffering, with dukkha. We see the anxiety in the eyes of a stranger. We hear the pain in a friend's voice, and we feel the ache of loneliness in the world around us. A heart that has been softened and made sensitive by practice cannot help but respond to this. This response, this natural quivering of the heart in the face of pain, is the birth of compassion, or karuna. Compassion is not a moral duty to be adopted or a rule to be followed. It is the spontaneous, organic, and wise response of a heart that is beginning to understand the truth of our shared existence. It is the emotional resonance of interdependence. It is essential to understand what true compassion is and what it is not. Compassion is often confused with pity, but they are worlds apart. Pity looks down from a position of superiority. It says, "Oh, you poor thing," and in doing so, it creates a distance between the observer and the sufferer. Pity reinforces the illusion of separation. Compassion, on the other hand, is a feeling of kinship. It meets the other at eye level. It says, "I am with you in this. I feel your pain as my own." It closes the distance. It is born from the recognition that your suffering could easily be my suffering. Nor is compassion a kind of weak sentimentality. There is a concept known as idiot compassion, which is the misguided desire to be nice at all costs, avoiding any difficult truths for fear of causing short-term discomfort. True compassion is courageous. It is strong. It is the fierce determination of a mother to protect her child. It is the strength to tell a friend a difficult truth they need to hear for their own well-being. It is empathy married to wisdom and courage. It is the ability to feel with another, combined with the active and sincere aspiration to help alleviate their suffering. One of the most remarkable and paradoxical qualities of compassion is its power to heal our own anxiety. Anxiety, by its very nature, is a state of intense self-preoccupation. Our world shrinks down to the size of our own fears, our own worries, our own me, myself, and I. We become trapped in the small, echo-filled room of our own egoic concerns. The practice of compassion is a powerful key that unlocks the door and allows us to step out of that cramped room into the vast open field of our shared humanity. When we genuinely turn our attention outwards and connect with the suffering of another being, a profound shift in perspective occurs. Our own problems, which moments before seemed all-consuming, are suddenly placed in a much larger context. They don't necessarily vanish, but their gravity, their suffocating importance, begins to diminish. It is very difficult to obsess about a mildly stressful email you have to send when you are sitting with a friend who has just received a serious medical diagnosis. This is a skillful and healing redirection of our mental energy. We shift our focus from the endless, fruitless loop of self-centered rumination to the meaningful, connecting act of being present for another. It breaks the narcissistic spell of anxiety. There is a moving story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates the embodied, active nature of true compassion. One day, while walking through the monastery with his attendant Ananda, the Buddha came upon a monk who was gravely ill with dysentery. He was lying alone in his own filth, and the other monks, out of fear of contagion or simple aversion, had abandoned him. The Buddha, the most revered being in their world, did not recoil in disgust. He did not simply offer a prayer from a distance. He turned to Ananda and said, "Fetch some water." Then, the Buddha himself, with his own hands, began to gently wash the sick monk's body, cleaning his sores and changing his soiled robes. The other monks, hearing what was happening, gathered in shame. The Buddha then looked at them and delivered a powerful teaching. He said, "Monks, you have no mother or father here to care for you. If you do not care for one another, who then will care for you? Know this, whoever looks after the sick and the suffering, that person is looking after me." This story reveals the core of karuna. It is not a lofty idea. It is hands-on. It overcomes fear and disgust, and it recognizes the profound dignity and worth of every being, no matter how broken or afflicted they may appear. So how do we cultivate this courageous and healing quality in our own hearts? We can begin with a formal, contemplative practice. Find a quiet place to sit, and start by bringing to mind a person you love and care for, someone who you know is currently struggling. It could be a friend, a family member. Picture them clearly and allow yourself to genuinely connect with the reality of their pain. Then, in your heart, hold the sincere wish for them. May you be free from this suffering. May you be free from this pain. May you find peace. Feel that warmth, that tender aspiration, filling your chest. Now, here is the next crucial step that is often the most difficult for us. Turn that same compassionate attention towards yourself. We are often our own harshest critics, speaking to ourselves with a cruelty we would never direct at a friend. Self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is the simple act of treating our own suffering with the same kindness and respect we would offer another. Acknowledge your own pain, your anxiety, your sadness, your fear. It is real. It is valid. And then, offer yourself the same sincere wish. May I be free from this suffering. May I be gentle with myself in this struggle. May I be at peace. For many of us, learning to be a true friend to ourselves is the most revolutionary practice of all, and it is the absolute bedrock of healing from anxiety. From there, you can gradually expand the circle of compassion. Bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see regularly but don't have strong feelings about, a cashier at the grocery store, a neighbor. Recognize that they too have a life filled with their own struggles and fears, and extend the wish to them. May you also be free from suffering. Then, if you feel ready, you can attempt the most challenging practice, extending compassion to a difficult person, someone who has hurt you. This is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is about wisely recognizing that their actions almost certainly spring from their own deep suffering and confusion. You can hold the intention. May you be free from the anger and ignorance that cause you to harm others, for in doing so, you will also be free. Finally, you can allow your heart to expand outwards in all directions, radiating this compassionate wish to all living beings everywhere, without exception. May all beings be free from suffering. Karuna, compassion, is the courageous and tender response of a wise heart to the reality of suffering in our interconnected world. It is the practice that dissolves our fear and melts the illusion of our separateness. It is the most powerful antidote to the poison of self-preoccupation that fuels our anxiety. But the opening of the heart does not end here. While compassion focuses on the beautiful wish for all beings to be free from pain, it has a radiant and proactive sibling. We can go beyond simply wishing for the absence of suffering. We can actively cultivate the wish for the presence of joy, happiness, and well-being for all. This boundless, generative practice of wishing well for everyone, without exception, is the next stage in our journey. It is the practice of loving kindness, or metta. As we learn to open our hearts with compassion, karuna, to the reality of suffering in the world, we feel a profound connection of solidarity and care. We hold the tender wish, may all beings be free from pain. This is a beautiful and necessary step on the path of the heart. But the journey does not end there. We can move beyond just wishing for the absence of suffering and begin to actively cultivate its opposite, the presence of happiness, joy, and well-being. This is the practice of metta, or loving kindness. If compassion is the heart's response to the cry of the world, loving kindness is the heart's proactive song. It is the boundless, unconditional, and radiant wish for all beings, without exception, to be happy and well. It is a form of emotional generosity, a way of generating an inner warmth so powerful that it naturally overflows to touch all those around us. The essence of metta is its unconditionality. In our ordinary lives, our love is often transactional. We love people because they are our family, because they are kind to us, because they make us feel good about ourselves. This love, while beautiful, is fragile. When conditions change, when people disappoint us, this love can easily turn to resentment or indifference. Metta is of a different quality altogether. It is more like the sun. The sun shines its warmth down upon the entire earth without discrimination. It does not decide that the beautiful rose is more worthy of its light than the humble weed. It does not withhold its rays from the wicked and give them only to the virtuous. It simply shines, offering its life-giving warmth to all, freely and without agenda. To practice metta is to learn how to cultivate this same quality of radiant, unconditional friendliness in our own hearts. This practice is a direct and powerful antidote to the poisons of the mind that cause so much of our anxiety. You cannot simultaneously feel genuine loving kindness for a person and feel hatred or ill will toward them. They are mutually exclusive states of mind. As we water the seed of metta, the weed of anger naturally withers. It is also an antidote to fear. Fear and anxiety often arise from a sense of threat, a feeling that we are vulnerable and the world is hostile. Metta replaces this feeling of hostility with a feeling of friendliness. It reframes our relationship with the world from one of opposition to one of kinship. It is also a powerful cure for envy. Envy comes from a mentality of scarcity, the belief that another person's happiness somehow diminishes our own. Metta cultivates a mentality of abundance, the joyful celebration of another's success, knowing that there is enough happiness to go around. The practice of cultivating loving kindness, known as metta bhavana, is a systematic and beautiful form of meditation that has been practiced for thousands of years. It is a gentle art, a training of the heart. It unfolds in stages, like a pebble dropped into a pond, with the ripples of kindness spreading ever outwards. We begin by finding a comfortable and relaxed posture, taking a few deep breaths to settle the body and mind. The first and most important stage is to offer loving kindness to ourselves. This is the non-negotiable foundation. We cannot offer water to others from a well that is dry. For many of us, this is the most difficult step, as we are so conditioned by the voice of our inner critic. But it is here that the deepest healing begins. You can place a hand gently over your heart and begin to silently repeat a few simple, heartfelt phrases. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe," "May I be happy," "May I be healthy," "May I live with ease." You repeat them slowly, gently, not as a demand, but as a sincere wish, a gentle blessing. You are not trying to force a feeling, but simply planting the seeds of kindness in the soil of your own heart. Stay here for as long as you need, offering this balm of friendliness to all the anxious, frightened, and wounded parts of yourself. Once you have established a baseline of warmth for yourself, the second stage is to bring to mind a dear friend or a benefactor, someone for whom you feel easy, uncomplicated love and gratitude. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. See them smiling, and then begin to direct the phrases of metta toward them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth and joy that arises from wishing well for someone you care about. Let that feeling of loving kindness flow freely from your heart to theirs. In the third stage, we begin to stretch the muscle of the heart. You bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone you see in your daily life, but have no strong feelings about one way or the other. A person who works at your local coffee shop, a bus driver, a neighbor you pass on the street. You recognize that this person, just like you, wants to be happy and to avoid suffering, and you offer them the same sincere wishes. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This practice begins to break down the artificial barriers of indifference that we erect between ourselves and the strangers around us, revealing our shared humanity. The fourth stage is the most challenging, and it is a truly transformative practice. Here, we bring to mind a difficult person. It is wise to start with someone who is only mildly irritating, not the source of your deepest trauma. It could be a co-worker who is abrasive, or a relative who is critical. The practice here is not to condone their harmful behavior or to force yourself to like them, It is a profound act of healing for your own heart. You recognize that their harmful actions are almost certainly driven by their own deep pain and confusion. A truly happy and peaceful person does not cause harm. And so, for the sake of your own freedom from the poison of resentment, you hold them in your awareness and offer the wish. May you too be happy. May you too find peace. In doing so, you are releasing yourself from the prison of your own anger. Finally, in the fifth stage, you let go of all distinctions between self, friend, neutral person, and difficult person. You allow the feeling of loving kindness to become boundless. You radiate it outwards in all directions, like the light of the sun, to the front, to the back, to the right, to the left, above, and below. You extend it to all beings, in all realms of existence. May all beings everywhere, without exception, be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, the heart transcends all boundaries and rests in a state of universal, benevolent love. This practice is not just a pleasant spiritual exercise. It is a form of neuroplasticity in action. Scientific studies have shown that regular practice of loving kindness, meditation, can literally rewire our brains. It strengthens the neural circuits associated with positive emotions, empathy, and emotional stability. It calms the amygdala, the brain's fear center. We are, in a very real sense, training ourselves for happiness, carving new, wholesome pathways in our own consciousness. Perhaps the most practical benefit of metta is that it helps us build what we might call an inner home, a safe refuge inside our own heart. Life will inevitably bring storms. There will be moments of intense anxiety, fear, loneliness, and grief. In those moments, we now have a place to go. We can pause, place a hand on our heart, and no matter what is happening externally, we can silently offer ourselves the phrases of loving kindness. May I be safe. May I be happy. This becomes our internal anchor, our portable source of solace and comfort that no one can ever take from us. It is the ultimate form of emotional resilience and self-care. Metta is the radiant, life-affirming practice of generating unconditional friendliness for ourselves and all beings. It transforms our inner landscape from a place of fear and scarcity to one of safety, warmth, and boundless abundance. It is the beautiful culmination of the opening of the heart. We have now learned to meet suffering with compassion and to actively cultivate happiness with loving kindness. We have powerful methods for nurturing the flowers in our mental garden. But what happens when, despite our best efforts, the thorny weeds of difficult emotions, anger, fear, sadness arise with a force that feels overwhelming? How do we meet these inner tempests without being capsized? This leads us to the crucial and practical skill of working directly and wisely with our most challenging emotional states. We have spent time learning to cultivate the beautiful, wholesome states of the heart, to water the flowers of compassion and loving kindness in our inner garden. This is a joyful and essential part of the path, but we must be realistic. Life is not always peaceful and bright. We are human, and to be human means that despite our best intentions, the storms of difficult emotions will inevitably arise. A sudden wave of anger can hijack our reason. A cold tide of fear can paralyze our heart. A heavy fog of sadness can descend and obscure all light. For many of us, these powerful emotions are the greatest source of our suffering. We fear them, we feel ashamed of them, and we feel powerless in their wake. The Buddhist path, however, does not teach us to fear these energies. It does not ask us to be perfect. Instead, it offers us a wise and compassionate middle way to work with these storms. a way to meet them with skill and courage, so that they no longer have the power to capsize our lives. In our ordinary, untrained state, we typically react to a difficult emotion in one of two ways, both of which lead to more suffering. The first strategy is suppression. When a painful feeling like anger or grief arises, we panic. We see it as a threat, something wrong and unacceptable. So we try to push it down, to bottle it up, to pretend it isn't there. We distract ourselves with work, with entertainment, with food, with anything to avoid feeling the raw discomfort in our own bodies. But suppressed energy does not disappear. It is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense effort, and eventually, that suppressed energy will find a way to erupt, often at an inappropriate time and with surprising force. Or it will fester beneath the surface, manifesting as chronic anxiety, depression, or even physical illness. The second failed strategy is a full-blown, uncontrolled expression. This is the opposite of suppression. Here, we completely identify with the emotion. We become the anger. We become the fear. The emotion takes over, and we act it out without any mindfulness or restraint. Anger becomes shouting, slammed doors, and hurtful words. Sadness becomes a deep dive into wallowing despair, replaying every painful memory. Fear becomes blind panic. This strategy not only reinforces and strengthens the neural pathway of that emotion, making it more likely to arise in the future, but it almost always causes harm to ourselves and others, leaving a painful residue of guilt and regret in its wake. The middle way offers a third option, one that is both courageous and gentle. It is the path of mindful presence. It is the choice neither to suppress nor to indulge, but to simply be with the emotion without being consumed by it. It is to allow the storm to rage while we remain securely in the calm, quiet eye of the hurricaneath space of our own awareness. This practice begins with the simple, yet radical, act of acknowledgement. When a powerful emotion surges through you, the first skillful step is to mentally note it, to name it. But the language here is key. We do not say, "I am angry." This phrase fuses our entire identity with a temporary emotional state. Instead, we can say to ourselves, softly and gently, "Ah, this is anger," or "Anger is present," or simply, "Anger, anger." This may seem like a small semantic trick, but it is psychologically profound. The moment you name the emotion as an object, you are no longer it. You have shifted from being the emotion to being the one who is aware of the emotion. You have created a space, and in that space, you are free. The emotion is no longer the totality of you. It is a powerful weather pattern passing through the vast sky of your awareness. To help us navigate this inner space with skill, the contemporary meditation teacher, Tara Brach, has formulated a beautiful and practical application of these ancient teachings, summarized in the acronym RAIN. The R stands for recognize. This is the first step we just discussed. We consciously recognize what is happening inside us. Recognizing anxiety, recognizing grief. The A stands for allow. This is the courageous step of letting the feeling be there. We stop fighting it. We drop the inner resistance. We give the emotion permission to exist, just as it is, for a few moments. This is the end of our war with our own experience. We allow the storm to be a storm. The I stands for investigate. This is not a heady, intellectual analysis of why you feel the way you do. It is an embodied, compassionate investigation. We bring a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity to the raw, physical sensations of the emotion. Where is this anger living in my body right now? Is it a burning heat in my chest? A clenching in my jaw? a tightness in my shoulders. What does it actually feel like? As pure energy. As we investigate in this way, we discover that the emotion is not a solid, monstrous thing. It is a shifting, vibrating, impermanent cascade of physical sensations. This investigation further depersonalizes the emotion and reveals its fluid, empty nature. Finally, the N stands for nurture. After you have recognized, allowed, and investigated the emotion, you can then ask yourself, what does this wounded part of me need right now? You can then offer yourself a gesture of self-compassion. This could be placing a hand over your heart, feeling its warmth and gentle pressure. It could be whispering some kind words to yourself, such as, "It's okay. This is a moment of suffering. I am here for you." In this step, you are becoming your own loving parent, offering comfort and care to the frightened child within you who is feeling the pain of the emotion. The RAIN practice is a complete cycle of mindfulness and compassion that can guide us through even the most intense inner storms. The power of meeting great hostility, not with more hostility, but with an unshakable, peaceful presence, is perfectly illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the ruthless murderer, Angulimala. Angulimala was a terrifying figure who had killed so many people that he wore a garland made of their fingers around his neck. One day, he saw the Buddha walking calmly and alone on the road and decided to make him his next victim. He drew his sword and began to run, but a strange thing happened. No matter how fast he ran, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who continued to walk at a slow, normal pace. Exhausted and enraged, Angulimala screamed, "Stop, monk! Stop!" The Buddha, without turning, replied in a calm, clear voice, "I have already stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." This enigmatic statement completely bewildered the murderer. "What do you mean?" he demanded. The Buddha turned to face him, his presence radiating a complete lack of fear, and explained, "I have stopped causing harm. I have stopped running on the endless wheel of violence and hatred. You are the one who is still running, still caught in the cycle of suffering you create for yourself and others." In the face of this absolute, fearless compassion, something inside Angulimala broke. The hatred and rage that had driven him for so long simply dissolved. He threw down his sword and bowed at the Buddha's feet. This story shows us that difficult emotional energies, even the most violent ones, can be transformed. They are not defeated by fighting them with more aggression. They are disarmed by the spacious, unwavering, and compassionate presence of a mind that is not afraid. When we learn to work with our difficult emotions in this way, our relationship to our inner world is revolutionized. Feelings of fear, anger, and sadness are no longer terrifying enemies to be vanquished or suppressed. They become what they truly are, valuable messengers. They are simply energy, arising in the body, bringing us information about our unmet needs, our unhealed wounds, or the places where we are still clinging. By learning to listen to them with the kind, spacious attention of mindfulness, we can receive their messages, learn from them, and allow them to pass without letting them become the masters of our lives. We have now explored the deep practices of cultivating wholesome states and skillfully meeting unwholesome ones. We have a complete toolkit for transforming our inner life. The final, essential task is to ensure that these practices are not confined to our meditation time, but that they are woven into the very fabric of our ordinary, everyday existence, transforming every moment into an opportunity for wisdom and peace. This is the practice of full integration. We have now journeyed together through the vast and profound landscape of the Eightfold Path. We began by establishing a foundation of wisdom, learning to see the world with the clarity of right view, and to aim our hearts with the kindness of right intention. We then built upon that foundation a life of ethical conduct, purifying our speech, our actions, and our livelihood. From that place of outer harmony, we turned inward to the deep training of the mind, cultivating a joyful right effort, the unwavering presence of right mindfulness, and the serene stability of right concentration. We have learned to work with our hearts, cultivating boundless compassion and loving kindness, and to meet our most difficult emotions with courage and skill. It can feel like a great deal of information, a collection of many different practices, and so we arrive at this final and most crucial stage of our exploration, the art of integration. This is where we learn to weave all of these threads together into a single, seamless tapestry of an awakened life. This is where we discover that the goal is not to become a good meditator, but to become a fully present and peaceful human being. The greatest illusion that can arise on a spiritual path is the creation of a division between our practice life and our real life. We might think of our practice as something we do for 20 minutes in the practice life, morning on a meditation cushion, a brief respite before we must dive back into the stressful, unmindful chaos of our day. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. The time we spend in formal meditation is like an athlete going to the gym. It is a dedicated period where we train the muscles of mindfulness, concentration, and compassion in a controlled environment. But the true purpose of that training is not to become good at sitting on a cushion. The purpose is to be able to use those developed muscles in the messy, unpredictable, and beautiful game of life itself. The ultimate aim is to dissolve the boundary between meditation and living, so that every moment becomes an opportunity for practice. How do we do this? We begin by infusing our most mundane daily activities with the quality of mindful presence. Consider the simple act of washing the dishes. For most of us, this is an autopilot chore. While our hands are in the water, our mind is a million miles away, replaying a conflict from work, worrying about a bill, planning the future. We are not really there for the experience. To transform this into a practice, we can make the gentle choice to be fully present. We can feel the warmth of the water on our skin. We can notice the smooth, slick texture of the soap. We can see the rainbow colors in the bubbles. We can hear the sound of the water rinsing a plate. In these moments, the chore is no longer a chore. It is a meditation. A stressful commute can become a practice in patience. A conversation with a loved one can become a practice in deep listening. Your work can become a practice of single-pointed focus. There is a famous Zen story that captures this truth perfectly. A young, eager monk approaches an old master and asks, "Master, what did you do before you were enlightened?" The master replies, "When I was hungry, I ate. When I was tired, I slept." The young monk, a bit confused, asks, "But master, isn't that what everyone does?" The old master smiles and says, "Number, when most people eat, they are not really eating. They are thinking of 1,000 other things. When they sleep, they are not really sleeping. They are wrestling with their dreams and worries. Now, when I am hungry, I just eat. When I am tired, I just sleep." The secret to an awakened life is not found in performing extraordinary acts. It is found in bringing an extraordinary quality of presence to our ordinary acts. The peace we seek is not in some distant future, but is hidden in the very texture of these simple, present moments. To help us remember to come back to this presence, we can create small, gentle anchors or rituals throughout our day. The the world is very good at pulling our attention away. These anchors are our way of gently pulling it back. For example, you can make a resolution that every time you hear the phone ring, you will take one conscious breath before you answer. That one breath is a moment of presence, a small reset for the mind. You can decide that every time you walk through a doorway, it will be a reminder to feel your feet on the floor. These transitional moments, getting out of your car, sitting down at your desk, waiting for a kettle to boil, can all become bells of mindfulness, calling you back home to the present. These small, repeated moments of mindfulness, woven into the fabric of your day, are often more powerful and transformative than a single, long meditation session that is disconnected from the rest of your life. As we walk this path, it is also important to remember that we do not have to walk it alone. The Buddha emphasized the importance of Sangha, which means a community of spiritual friends. To walk this path in isolation can be incredibly difficult. We are social beings, and we are deeply influenced by the people with whom we surround ourselves. A Sangha is a community of noble friends who support and inspire our practice. This doesn't have to be a formal group at a Buddhist center. It can be a wise friend you can speak to honestly. It can be a therapist or a mentor. It can even be an online community of like-minded people. When we feel discouraged, our Sangha can offer us inspiration. When we are confused, they can offer us a different perspective. When we are successful in our practice, they can rejoice with us. They are the other jewels in Indra's net who help polish our own jewel and whose light reminds us of our own potential. To practice in a community is a beautiful expression of interdependence. Finally, we must infuse this entire journey with the supreme overarching practice, the practice of patience and self-compassion. This is a lifelong path, not a 10-day course with a certificate of enlightenment at the end. There will be wonderful days of clarity, where the mind is calm and the heart is open. And there will be difficult days of confusion, where the monkey mind seems more chaotic than ever, and we feel like we have made no progress at all. This is normal. It is part of the path. The true measure of our practice is not whether we ever fall down, but how kindly we pick ourselves back up. To be able to meet our own perceived failures with a gentle and forgiving heart is perhaps the most advanced practice of all. The goal is not to be a perfect, flawless practitioner. The goal is to be a kind one. The goal is to keep showing up for our own life with an open heart, ready to begin again in this very moment. To integrate the practice is to live with the understanding that every moment is workable. Every breath is an opportunity to be mindful. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice kindness. Every difficulty is an opportunity to cultivate patience. Every joy is an opportunity to feel gratitude. We learn to see that peace is not a final destination we must struggle to reach. It is a way of walking, a way of being that is available to us right now. As we weave these threads of wisdom, ethics, and mental discipline into the whole cloth of our lives, the lake of our mind learns to stay calm and clear, not just in the quiet of meditation, but even when the winds of life are blowing. We have now explored the complete path laid out by the great Physiciante, diagnosis of our disease, its ultimate cause, the promise of a cure, and the comprehensive medicine to bring it about. It is now time to step back, to reflect on this entire journey, and to gather its essential wisdom into our hearts. We began our journey together in the quiet desperation of 3 a.m., a captive to a mind that would not be still. We gave that restless energy a name, the monkey mind, and we set out in search of a path to peace. That path first led us to a courageous diagnosis, the first noble truth of dukkha, the universal reality of our unease. We looked deeply, and saw its cause in the second noble truth, the insatiable thirst of tanha that keeps us forever wanting, forever chasing. Just as we might have felt lost, the third noble truth appeared as a brilliant light of hope, the promise that an end to this suffering is possible. And finally, we were given a map, the fourth noble truth, the comprehensive and practical Eightfold Path to guide us home. We have walked this path together, learning to see with wisdom, to act with integrity, and to train the heart and mind with a gentle and patient skill. We have discovered the anchor of mindfulness, the warmth of compassion, and the profound freedom of seeing things as they truly are. The ultimate message of this ancient path is not that it offers a magical cure to erase all of life's difficulties. The storms will still come. The winds of change will still blow. The first arrow of unavoidable pain will still, at times, find its mark. The wisdom of this path does not lie in building a fortress to hide from life. It lies in discovering how not to shoot ourselves with the second arrow. It is about fundamentally transforming our relationship with our own mind and with the world. Peace, we discover, is not the absence of noise, but the ability to find a quiet center in the midst of it. Restful, healing sleep is not something we must chase or conquer. It is the natural, gentle gift that comes from a mind that has learned, during its waking hours, how to be at peace with itself. And so you find yourself here, at the end of this exploration, but at the true beginning of your own journey. You have everything you need to take the next step. You do not need to become someone else. You do not need to move to a monastery or change your entire life overnight. The power to walk this path lies in the simple, profound choices you make in this very moment. It begins with the intention to be just 1% kinder to yourself today than you were yesterday. It begins with the choice to take a single, conscious breath before you answer an email. It begins with feeling the warmth of the water on your hands as you wash a cup. It begins with truly tasting the first bite of your next meal. The path to peace is not a distant summit to be conquered. It is a way of walking, and it is found right here, beneath your feet, in the sacred ground of this present moment. It is always here, and it is always waiting for you.